All right, we're here back on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. I am your host, so humbled here, Mike Cunningham, your humble host here of the not the national, that's my title. That was dumb. I'm the host of the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections podcast. I guess my title is National Business Development Manager. Overall, though, I'm just so happy that I'm here, you're here, and today's guest is here. We're going to have a lot of fun. It is, if you're listening during the week that this is being, not the week this is being recorded, that this was published, it's NCAA championship time. So I'm in Pueblo right now, the magic of podcast world. I'm in Pueblo getting set up for NCAA Division IIs. We've got a crew out in Rochester for Division IIIs. We've got crews out in West and East, North Florida and Sacramento State for first round NCAA Division I's. We are all over the place, and we're kicking off this championship. What a better way to kick off this championship week than one of the perennial championship teams in the Division II era from Ashland University. So help me welcome from Ashland University, the Eagles, the Eagles, the assistant coach, Mr. Logan Sharpe. Logan, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I almost said Screaming Eagles, but who is that? That's somebody else. Someone's a Screaming Eagle. Yeah. I always wondered, like someone was like, oh, okay, we want to be the Eagles, but there's a lot of Eagles, so let's make ourselves the Screaming Eagles, which, I guess. Actually, okay, see, we just run into tangents here. Have you actually heard what an eagle sounds like?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Not the movie. Not the movie Eagles, not like what you see in the movie, like what a real eagle sounds like.
Yeah. No, I've been an avid outdoorsman.
Oh,
so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll probably get into that. If you're listening and you only know of an eagle from like what you see in a movie, well, that's actually a hawk. Go YouTube an eagle. It will surprise you. Like Screaming Eagle actually is a pretty good description. Right. It's an odd sound for people who grew up watching, TV shows and movies. And like, I have this idea of what an eagle sounds like. It ain't what an eagle sounds like. And that's why you come to the Gill Connections podcast to find out what eagles actually sound like. Logan, man, thanks for being here today, man. This is a real treat. When we started the podcast up, we had a very specific angle of what and when, who, and how to record for guests here. And, through that time, we get a lot of people that reach out and say, hey, I'd love to be a guest and things like that. And I'm always like, I'll put you on the list. But I only get 52 a year. So that, so if you think about it, if I have a list of 52, if I tell you you're on the list and you're number 52, it's a year from now that I'll get to you. Logan, you and I connected, years ago. And I was like, Logan, you're on the list. And I'm sure you either thought, oh, okay, well, Mike will call soon. Or after I didn't call soon, you're like, oh, Mike, whatever. Yeah, sure. The list.
Nah, I just know as a young coach, I was nobody at the time.
No.
I'll wait. I'll wait my years.
It is early. It is 9:00 my time when we're recording this. And now this is twice I have to have this conversation today. I had this conversation on Twitter this morning, and now I'm going to have it with you. You were not, and still are not, any kind of lowly assistant coach or lowly new coach, etc. I had a coach today message me and say, oh, I'm just a low. In fact, he used the word lowly pole vault / distance coach. And I was like, never, ever. You are not lowly. What you do as a coach, whether you're on the high school, college level, whether you're on the NAI, JUCO, Power 5, it doesn't matter. What you do as a track coach is immeasurable. The positivity that you give young people, there is no amount of value that we can give. And we certainly undervalue what we do as coaches for pay and even our own selves. Exactly what you said there. I knew I was a lowly new. Bull crap. Day one of a track coach, day 1,000 of a track coach. You are awesome, my friend. You really are. You deserve to be on the podcast back then. You deserve to be on the podcast now. You will deserve to be on the podcast. You deserve way more than this lowly old podcast. Trust me, man. So that's my rant. I will always, when someone tells me I'm just a track coach or I'm just a throws coach or I'm a low, like bull crap, you are for me and my other teammates here, Gil, you're at the highest of the mountain, buddy. No one is better than a track coach. All right. Will you promise me you will stop? You will never say that kind of thing again? All right. Let's say I've made success. in the podcast already, just in the first 5 minutes here. All right, Logan, let's get into it, man. Let's find out you and your journey and kind of just explore, how you got to where you are today. I'm imagining that there's some pretty interesting turns. We already know there's some outdoorsman side to you here. So let's jump in our Wayback Machine and talk to us about where does coaching for track and field, maybe it's other sports that builds into it, but where does coaching begin for you?
So I actually started coaching back at Southern Connecticut State. I was fifth year student athlete, getting done with my fifth year, going into my 6-year grad school, my second year grad school basically, and still wanted to train post collegiately. Had run 51.3 in the hurdles, and I was like, Coach, I want to keep going. And he was like, hey, he's like, let's move. It was funny because during my time at Southern as an athlete, I had ran the 800 a little bit for him, ran on the 4x8s, and he's like, let's move you up in events. So did a year of training with him more as an 800 runner. Hated my life. Did not like mileage. He was trying to push on getting my mileage up, and it's not a fan of losing weight. I couldn't keep weight on to begin with, so it was one of those things. I'm like, nah, Coach, this isn't for me. But during that time, he had said, hey, I need some extra hands on deck. Coach Wallen has always had a couple coaches around, but then keeps a lot of alumni around him, and basically keeps the team going with the same pride and the Southern Owls that he's had since he started there. And it was one of those things where he was like, here's a stopwatch. You worked with the hurdlers, you work with the 400 runners. Let's keep that going. So that's where I started training and coaching athletes. I did that for 2 years and then decided to move on.
What was the plan? So this was, at the tail end of your athletic career and your college career. What was the plan up to that point? What were you majoring in? What did you think you were going to become?
So when I started college, I had gone in thinking I was going to be an athletic trainer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I switched that my freshman year from athletic training to stay in the exercise science field and just go more human performance route. So I wasn't sure if I was going to go human performance and be a strength conditioning coach or go into physical therapy. A lot of Southern's human performance program, especially undergrad, and then going into grad school is more based around cardiac rehab. So one of the professors really pushed me to go into the hospital and work with basically heart attack patients or stroke patients and stuff like that. But I had realized quickly as an athletic training major, once I had gotten banged up my freshman year, I was like, I do not want to work with unhealthy or sick people my entire life. And that's when I was like, let me go human performance. Let me help prevent people from being that way.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And so I was like, no, I did not want to work with that. Started going back into that route when I started thinking physical therapy. And it had a little internship that I was doing locally near Southern. And what stopped me from doing that was I had to take a cast off a woman's foot that was 6 months late. You go to cut that cast off and the skin peeled off with it, and the smell of it, we had to shut the room down, the therapy room, for the entire day, have a special cleaning service come in. It was probably the worst smelling thing I've ever witnessed. And at that point I was like, nope, not dealing with physical therapy.
I listen, I'm a big, obviously, maybe not obviously, podcast listener. And one of my favorite podcasts is Stuff You Should Know. And the other day, their episode was on smell-o-vision. And I'm so thankful that has never, not more than right now, am I more thankful that has never become a thing. Because as you just described it there for like 20 seconds. And I was like, oh, yeah, that, like, I can't imagine, like, oh, yeah, that would change some careers. Yeah. some thoughts on careers there, that's for sure. How are you? It's interesting. You're a 400 hurdler, and by the way, 51.30.
Yep.
Little known fact, I actually in high school ran 51.30. That's actually my PR as well.
Okay.
Now that was in the 110 hurdles though, so I'm not sure how that compares, but that actually may be close to my actual PR in the 110 hurdles. It's terrible. But what it's interesting, and we don't talk X's and O's, but as a philosophy of coaching, and we're going to step back to your high school coaching as well, that 400 hurdle to 800 and not 1500, because 1500 I think is
I ran a mile
universally,
once indoors in
yeah,
college.
kind of like universally, like that's a distance event. It's
Yeah,
a fast distance event, but it's a distance. But that 800 is that bridge of like some people are like, nope, you got to be a 400 person to run the 800 fast, or nope, you got to be a 1500 meter mile
right.
person to run the 800 meter fast. So it's just interesting there. What was your experience like coming out of high school coaching wise, and then inside of college coaching wise?
In terms of me being trained, or
Yeah, more like how you were trained, and not how like, oh, I was trained as a sprinter or a distance person, but like, did there's a lot of different styles of coaching, from nurturing to military-esque,
right.
my way or the highway, collaboratively. What kind of, as you are coming out of your, your last couple of years and you're going into coaching, you're built based on how you were coached. So
Right.
I want to figure out like, how were you coached? What kind of what did you see a coach was, and so therefore you probably mimicked either towards it or completely opposite of it if it was a style that you didn't like.
So high school, I had a young coach. He was directly out of college, and he did not know anything about the hurdles. Did not know anything
Mm-hmm.
about the 400. He was actually more of an 800 guy. That he was dating the older sister of one of our top girls that ended up going to Hartford for the multi.
Mm-hmm.
So he was big into knowing the jumps, knowing short sprints, knowing and trying to figure out the hurdles for the multi. Um, and I was in Schoharie, New York, upstate New York. We didn't have a all-weather track, and at the time, um, we had one of the old cinder tracks to train on. I think we had maybe 3 or 4 hurdles, and we had the traditional schedule where you have some of the some of the invitationals to go to on Saturdays, but we really compete a lot Tuesdays and Thursdays at the dual meets
Mm-hmm.
that were hand timed.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where Tuesdays and Thursdays were workout days. Monday, Wednesday was kind of like, oh, go for a 20-minute run, just go for an easy
Mm-hmm.
run, or let's try to fix something of what you're doing over a hurdle. But him not really understanding hurdles, hey, like, just get comfortable jumping them,
Mm-hmm.
get comfortable running in between and going at them fast. So, high school, I managed to run 54 seconds in the 400 hurdles, and I joke I did it running on the roads. Did not My senior year, junior year, chose not to do any winter sports. So it's kind of like, oh, how do I get better? Well, people talk about how I look like a distance runner. So let me put some weight on. Let me put some mass on with the weight room. Didn't have a strength conditioning coach. Was kind of going in, do what I felt like. Put a hurdle in the gym. Got in trouble because I was scraping up the gym floor. Smashing hurdles, breaking hurdles, having the metal scratching up the polyurethane. So that was always fun, getting yelled at for that stuff. But he was a coach that made me fall in love with the sport.
Yeah. How so? Because you're
Just
saying
because
he did.
we didn't know
You're.
anything about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was me. My junior year, there was actually a freshman or sophomore 400 hurdler girl that when I would look back a couple of years ago, she ran 63 seconds as a freshman or sophomore. I
Yeah.
forget what year she was. So she was pretty quick and probably could have gone places. I think she just got overwhelmed with the sport in high school and just kind of quit and went on to do other stuff. There was myself, there was her, and then there was the multi that ended up going to University of Hartford. And it was like us three with a coach that every Saturday was like, okay, this is your big meet, go compete. And it was one of those things where we had fun doing it. It was just the lifestyle that we had created was, oh, this is a fun thing to do. Because my other sport was soccer, which I had started early on in my life. That was my family sport. So it was going to college. It was deciding, am I going to go play soccer or am I going to go run track?
So,
And
so that's what I mean about like style. So this feels like, you correct me where appropriate. This wasn't necessarily, this high school coach of yours wasn't necessarily a technical coach. Maybe he wasn't the jumps, but as far as your events,
yeah,
but was very nurturing and competitive driven for you guys of like, okay, hey, it's Saturday, go
go
compete.
win.
Yeah, go win. And that is what helped you, your words there. I fell in love with the sport because of that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting because when we talk about different styles of coaches, and again, not the X's and O's portion, but the the style that you're going to be, are you going to be the type of coach that knows every in and out, every angle where the body's supposed to be, and shin angles and blah, blah, all the, and those things are important,
Right.
or are you going to be a the stereotypical rah rah, cheerleading type of coach. That's also important.
Yeah.
You know, having trust built with your athletes is important, and positivity is important. I think the truly elite coaches, and you can define elite in different ways, do both in a very competent manner. But this seemed like someone who was like, all right, maybe I don't know everything about the hurdles, and because of a lot of other, you know, factors. Maybe I'm not going to get into, you know, every little thing about the hurdles. I know sprints and jumps, so I'm going to stay over there, but I got to coach these kids. So, okay, if I can't technically teach them, well, then I'm going to make them believe in themselves, and I'm going to make them get hyped up for the actual race itself. Yeah, go ahead. It's always visitors on the podcast. Everybody's trying to get on.
When head coach comes, you got to answer.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's very true. Yeah, coach, how are you doing? Do we need to pause? Does he need to do something? I get it. I get it. Yeah. So but that's interesting. That's where I'm trying to get at, is like, okay, because so that's how your base going into colleges. You got like, okay, I maybe don't recognize. I recognize that my coach maybe doesn't know, air quotes there, everything. But boy, I'd probably run through a brick wall for them if they told me that was the right thing to do. Now, go into your college coaching. How did that? So you kind of have like, this is what a track coach does. Did it follow suit in college, or did you get a different style?
So it's debatable. So it was interesting getting recruited out of high school. I was told by Southern Connecticut's former coaches, the way to get a scholarship was to run 54 flat in the 400 hurdles. And I was like, okay, set my goals. Nobody else really knew about that. Like 54 flat is my goal. Like, I'm going to prove this, because it was one of those things where I was looking at a couple different schools, and a bunch of D3 schools reached out to me like, hey, especially in New York, come here. I'm like, I don't want to run Division III, nothing against that. I just needed some aid to help pay for going to, other than my academics, let me have some aid to help pay for what I'm about to do. I was looking at military academies, stuff like that, and just got told, hey, that the military is most important. It's not going to be running track. I'm like, well, that turned me away from that. It was, so I had actually narrowed it down to a couple different schools, and it was either Southern Connecticut or UConn. And what turned me away from UConn was Coach Roy. Love him to death. He's an awesome guy. He had sent me an email that said, let me know how your indoor season goes. And I was like, okay. I was like, Coach Roy, I hate to tell you, unfortunately, my school isn't sponsored indoor track. We're not a big enough school. Got the email back. Best of luck to your future. And I was like, okay. Now I'm going to go to Southern Connecticut, another school in Connecticut. It's going to compete a lot against UConn. I had a little bit of a vendetta against UConn.
Yeah, it sounds like
never
it.
Gonna
Sure.
lose.
Yeah.
Not lose to UConn guy. If they're in my heat, I'm not losing to them.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where that was the case. I refused to lose to them. But Will Wright was the sprints and hurdles coach at Southern Connecticut, and he had got my contact from going to a Springfield College fair for athletic trainers. So he wrote me a handwritten letter saying, hey, I'd really like to have you here, but here's the goal. You got to run 54 flat to get any scholarship money. There's another hurdler that we have who's running 52 seconds. He's like, so he's going to be here next year. Turns out they used his eligibility at the conference championship, so he was going to get his 5th year because they need him for a 4x4. So he ran the 404, helped them make the national meet. Coach Wright retired. The day after he retired, I ran 54 flat.
Oh, wow.
Me not knowing, I call him up. Hey, I'm at the New York State. It was like our class championship to go to the state championship, and I call him up like, hey, I just ran 54 flat. Oh, well, I'll let the next coach know.
He's like, great, I'm heading to the beach.
he'll try to yell it with you. He's like, unfortunately, Coach Maloney and I just decided we're retiring from Southern Connecticut yesterday.
What did you be? I mean, because, you know, I love I was really fearful that you were going to give me the story of they told you run 54 flat and you did it, and then they didn't give you what they said. That's always a fear of mine. That's not the case here.
No, that's not the case.
But you're, you know, the words a coach said, this is why you're not a lowly coach and all this kind of things, because the words you say to young people mean something. So this coach said you run 54 flat, and that it feels like that 54 was burned in your head, like, okay, I've got a goal. I
had it on a dartboard in my bedroom.
Yeah, I will do if I don't hit 54, it ain't gonna be because I didn't do everything for it, right? Because that coach said that. If that coach said 53 would have been your number, 55, whatever, you know, that's burned in your head. And so you've been driving towards that. You hit it. You call the coach from the meet. I love that. Yeah. and they say, yeah, hey, congratulations. I'll let the next staff know. And remember, you're an 18-year-old kid. Remember, we 18-year-old kids know nothing. I know, and at 18, I know I thought I knew everything, but you know nothing. So here's this person you're kind of, I'm going to use the word idolizing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm saying, you know, like, you're like, oh man, you said 54, then 54 is the number. And they say, hey, I'm not going to be here. I'll let the next coaching staff knows. How did that feel?
I wasn't sure. Like, I was like, okay, I'm still, like, we had already deposited at the school and stuff like that. It was, I mean, it's May at this point, so almost June. And I was like, we already deposited. It's okay. Like, I'm gonna go there. And my parents like, well, if you don't get scholarship money, we'll figure it out. Like, we had already decided
Wow.
we're going there.
Yeah.
So make it work, you know?
Yeah.
So I end up there, and then I think within the first couple days, they had decided, the school had hired Coach Wallen to be the assistant coach for the year. And he was told by the new head coach, like, hey, he's like, I got this hurdler coming in. He was told he's running, like, I had already talked to the head coach, the new one, and he was like, I was told that he ran at 54, and he was promised money. He's like, I want you to meet with him, see what we decide. So I had to walk across the street to Moorfield House, right? And I didn't know anything about how I walked and stuff like that. And it was a funny, he could see out the window to watch me walk across. So I'm texting him back and forth, like, yeah, I'm on my way. So I go over there, and he described it at, like, a year or two later, he described it as like, yeah, this kid weighing probably 140 pounds comes bouncing across the track or across the road. He's like, he didn't look like he had any sort of, like, no spring in him. He was like, it was all springs, ready to go. And so he knew I had the springs. He's like, we just had to put some more power behind him. So me, it was like, yeah, we can give you whatever money we had left. And was it necessarily enough? And now as a coach, I'm like, well, dang, I wish I had gotten more, you know, but
Sure.
just like every kid. But I was just so happy that, oh shoot, this is still true. I can still get this money that I was promised from what I did, you know.
That's awesome.
So it was a quick connection. Took all year that year to run 54 again until the conference championship to win it as a freshman. But luckily UMass Lowell had a bunch of kids redshirted, so that was able to happen. But it was one of those things where I went into Southern Connecticut with which like you said, it's another perennial powerhouse, Division II, and not understanding track, not ever running against fast people. And now all of a sudden I'm thrown into running with kids that had run just as fast as me, if not faster, some a little bit slower. And everybody's telling me like, yeah, you're going to be the next best guy. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a lost freshman.
All right.
But I was fortunate enough to kind of be able to be like that fourth or fifth best guy, to be able to throw on relays every single weekend. And one of my favorite best friends, training partner, I remember hearing him in the background being like, Coach, get Logan off the relay. He's not running well. And Coach Wallen's like, no, trust me, he's going to come through. Like, this is going to work. And Selassie, my training partner team, is like, no, he's terrible right now. Get rid of him. But we can't run the 404 with him. Well, ended up All-American leadoff leg freshman year outdoors. And we're like, okay.
Wow.
So then that trickled together throughout my whole career of like, okay, I'm a 4x4 guy running the 400 leg of the DMRs. We're top 3 in the nation. But what was burning me was, well, the next goal is to make the national meet in the 400 hurdles, which didn't happen until my junior year. And it was one of those things where in the East Coast, you're running 52 seconds at that time, and you're one of the top guys. And it's back to what I was facing in high school, where it's like, who do I have to race? Who can I go beat? And then that's why I'd gotten into of like, okay, I can go win a race, but am I prepared for the next level? And it turned into get to nationals, and yeah, I'd run well. I'd be a little bit tired, but I'd compete, and I'd get in top 10. I'd place top 8 and become an All-American. So it was back and forth the last 2 years with that sort of mindset.
That's cool. Hey, I'm curious. This is a little fast forwarded here because we haven't even started the actual coaching journey here yet.
Right.
But you said, it's just kind of popped in my head when you said, you know, you ran 54 out of high school, and then that freshman year, and you described yourself as a lost freshman, which I think if we all think back to our freshman year, we were all lost in some form or fashion, some longer than others, and some shorter. But boy, freshman year, college is a whole different ball. I don't care how big of a high school you went to and what responsibilities you had. College is different. Yeah. But you said it took until I think you said conference when you ran 54 again.
Yeah.
Do you see that often, where it takes someone, regardless of talent, like whether they were a superstar or, beginner, that it takes later into their freshman year for them to start hitting their PRs? Is that common?
I believe so. Yeah. I
Why
think
why is that? I have a theory, but I want to hear what you think.
there's different training philosophies going on. There's different
Mm,
styles, different volumes of training, different intensities, um, more specificity going on. And one of the biggest things I always look at is they're no longer, as a coach, I realize it now, you're no longer with mom and dad at night. There's other outside factors that
mm,
the coach as a whole is trying to figure out. Okay, are they sleeping the same way? Are they eating the same way? What's their extracurricular activities looking like? You know what I mean? And
yeah.
there's so much that plays into it. It's trying to help them get back to, and they may never get back to the same way that they were in high school in terms of their lifestyle,
Mm.
but now we just make them better as athletes. So
That's good. That's not my was not my guess. That's important though. I think you're right. When you think about, it's much easier to stay up till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at night. Past that in college, it's easier to access to alcohol is easier. Not everybody's doing that, I understand, but that's a part of it. Stress of exams and the same, if not
we're just
more.
generally being away from home,
Yeah, yeah, and good point about stress of, like, um,
making
mom,
friends.
dad's not home when I go, when I go back to my dorm. They're just not there. I don't get to talk to them every day or see them every day or get hugged every day. Yeah, that's interesting because on the outside, you would think it's like, okay, you have a kid who, most track kids, most, not all, are still only doing track. Call it maybe a February or March through May or June, depending on the state meet. Maybe they're playing another sport. Maybe they're not. Some are not. So some are not doing any sport until March, and then they're doing track, and then they get recruited, and you think, oh, but man, now you're going to start practice at, call it Labor Day. You're going to have all this fall to compete. You're going to go through indoor season. You're going to compete. You're going to compete at a higher, like you're going to have to be better because you're going to compete against more better kids. Why aren't you PRing from the jump?
Right.
And it can be discouraging as well. Here's my thought. Here's my guess. You tell me, as the coach. I haven't coached in forever, so you're the expert here on this one. I think there is a difference in motivation.
I I can agree with that as well.
Yeah, when you're coaching or when you're competing in high school, mom and dad, generally speaking, are at every meet. Friends
Mhm.
and families, families are there. That's why when you go to a high school meet, there's a lot of people in the stands. In the college, there's not. Our families don't get to travel as much, and we
Right.
don't have as many fans as other sports, unfortunately, at this point. Uh, so there's a different motivation to it, and I think that takes a while to find out, like, oh, I used to run track because I liked when mom and dad clapped for me, or my teammate was happy for me. And now, because like you just described an example of where the teammate was not rooting for you. Get Logan off the 4x4.
Right.
Yeah, and that would almost never happen in high
It
school.
turned
Like,
out
oh
we ended up
man,
being best friends.
yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. And in high school, it's probably like, oh man, Logan, we love having you on the team. Yeah, I wish we could do an 8x4 because I want Joey and Tommy on the team too, right?
Right.
So I think there is a change that has to occur for athletes, again, generally speaking, where they are competing for others. Like, oh, mom is happy, friends are happy, I'm happy to be part of a team. To like, oh, there's no one else here. It's me. I know I'm on this team, and yes, there's 4x4, there's conference teams and things like that. But I have to be a better 100-meter runner or 800-meter runner. Like, there's no one else here. It's me. I got to do the things, which then starts playing into I got to sleep, I got to eat right, things like that. That's how I've always thought. It's just different, and even different when you go to the next level, like for the elites and stuff. I think that's why you see amazing things happen at like world champs and Olympics, because as an elite runner, you have no team. There are no teams at this point. You can say you run for Team Adidas or Team Nike, but y'all ain't a team. Sorry, it's just who you're employed by. But when we get to world champs teams in Olympics, we have Team USA. We're all wearing that USA flag. Now I'm running for someone, like it becomes a camaraderie effect. So
Right.
anyway, I just thought about that when you said that. I was like, man, I was like, that's
I
hard.
mean, I completely agree because like even looking back at the transition we're in right now, like we had conference last week, And then we're getting a last chance meet this week, but more than half the team is now home because finals were done. And so I've already put the message out to the team, like, hey, now is where you got to find that intrinsic motivation. Like, what
Yeah.
is really driving you? If you're in the last chance meet trying to hit another faster mark, how are you going to do that without your teammates with you?
Yeah.
There's less people now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Southern Connecticut State,
Yep.
your last few years, you kind of coaches giving you a stopwatch. The coaches are big on having alumni stay around. So are you at this point now like, oh, I'm going to be a track coach, or are you still maybe exploring different
No, by that
professions?
time, absolutely. I was like, it's definitely I want to go into track coaching.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he pushed for me was to start paying. We had Joe Van Gilder was there at the time as an assistant coach, and he was coaching more of the short sprints, short hurdles. And Coach Wallen came out and he was like, hey, he's like, I understand. He's like, you understand my ways right now with the 400 hurdles. He's like, but I need you to kind of be monitoring and shadowing other coaches to help you understand more than just one event or two
Wow.
events, because I need you to be able to, if you move on and when you move on, to be able to be valuable enough to know other events. He's like, I'm not sure if you want to go on jumps. I'm not sure if you want to go and watch just more multi stuff. He's like, but he's like, you need to know other events. So me being sprinter mindset and against at the time against jumpers, sprinter mentality, or sprinters versus distance,
Right.
I'm going to watch just the sprints
Hmm.
at the time. So and we had some pretty good hurdlers and stuff and short sprinters going on at Southern. It was kind of like the building of that, what's been the success there recently. So I was kind of able to just hang out at practice, help Joe with all the moving wickets around and understanding, hey, why, and that's where I started learning, why are we doing this stuff. So at that point, it was like a year and a half of working with him. And that's where it's like, okay, this is going to be my niche. I'm going to be sprints, hurdles, and definitely go that route with coaching. So
a lot of coaching education to me is what I call formal and informal. Formal being the certificate route, the USATFs, USTFCA, Altus, things like that. Informal, I consider like peer-to-peer and things like that. So you're doing a lot of informal coaching education. Like you're now, instead of just like being barked at, Logan, go run this, go do this. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm administering workouts. And it sounded like your mind flipped of like, oh, well, let me understand why we're doing this as well.
I think that it was perfect timing just because I was still a student. I was finishing my grad school and I had dove in a lot with the exercise science and knowing the science of how the body's, what's going on in the body, given certain workouts, given certain changes of the blood. It was like, wait a second, why are we doing this with the short sprints, but this with the long sprints, and understand intensities, volume differences? Is like, why does this athlete need this versus this athlete, even though they're in the same event?
Oh, yeah.
So
that's interesting.
It was I don't think I actually went to grad school to go just to grad school. I think it was more so that time building of me being able to say, hey, the grad school is important. It's going to definitely help me with my career of coaching different types of athletes with knowing the science behind it. But I was also knowing more of the whys through the actual coaching side and learning more of the art and of the coaching of it. So
yeah, there's the book side, like learning the things, and then there's the lab and getting in there and getting your hands dirty and figuring out. Yeah. So what did you do after that time? What was the first step to getting into actual coaching, like paid coaching?
So I was at Yale University at the springtime meet, rainy day, just standing there. I think we were watching jumps. And Shania Williams, who's the director at New Haven, she came up to me and was like, hey, want to come to the dark side? And I was like, what does that mean? And she's like, do you want to come across the road and help me coach? Kevin LaSure had left there a couple of years before that. They had gone through some coaching issues. So they were looking for a new sprints coach. And I was like, what's the position? She's like, head men's coach. I'm like, no way. There's no way I'm ready for that. I'm like, I'm 25.
Wow.
I'm 25 years old. She's like, no, she's like, I got you. Don't worry. So she's like, just fill out the application. She's like, and we'll get things moving. I was like, okay. So me, like, yeah, like I want to make money. I don't want to just sit here being a not even a named GA,
Right.
volunteer,
Right.
and working all this physical therapy stuff all day, then trying to come back and train. And I was like, I can go make money. And it was interesting because that year I had actually run well enough to get not necessarily the A standard for USA's, but I knew I was high enough on the list that I could go out to USA's and for the 400 hurdles. And I was like, I started booking everything up and getting ready to go to that meet. And Debbie Chin at University of New Haven, her and Robin Salters, they called me up one day and they're like, hey, like, we'd like to schedule you for an interview for this date. And that date was the same date I was about to fly out.
Of course. Yeah.
And I was like,
Decision time.
I was like, am I ready to go run really fast or am I ready to go make some money? And
I honestly have no idea what I would have chosen. What did you do?
so I went to try to make money.
Yeah. Wow.
That year I was living off a credit card and living life the dumb way of just swiping for everything because I wasn't making enough money to live. I had enough to pay rent.
What would you have done? I mean, I think that's interesting. These forks in the road where we have decisions to make. And it's one thing when an athlete wants to pursue making the world champs or, Olympics, of course. It's hard to say no.
I think what I was realizing is 51 wasn't going to cut it.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you.
Because 51 slow.
Because when a kid, I say a kid, when a young person says, hey, I want to pursue the Olympics and they have a shot, and it's like, man, even if they don't make it, I don't want them to be a 35, 40-year-old and regret it. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Dexter Falk. Dexter was one of the top hurdlers in the country here, which made him still like, seventh in the country. Like he was 13:11, I think was his PR or something like that. And I can't remember the years, but basically he had not made the Olympic team from the trials. And he was like, yeah, I'm trying to decide, am I still going to do this? And I was like, you're not making a 1-year decision. I was like, in track, you're making a 4-year decision. Can you go to the next Olympic trials and try to make that team and things like that? And he ended up going on for the next 4 years. Again, did not make the Olympic team, but again, 13:11. I mean, he's one of the greatest hurdlers we've ever had, 13:11, 13:14. We had a young man here who worked for us, a javelin thrower, Tim Glover. And he was like, man, he goes, I think I need to stop working here and pursue the Olympics. And he's an 85 plus meter thrower. So it's like, oh, he's got an actual shot here. And it's like, man, love him. He's so valuable to us. But I don't want him as a 40-year going, man, why did I do this? Why did I go to profession? I can always go back in profession to make money, And so he did quit, and he made the world champs team, which I mean, like, oh God, like, he didn't make the Olympics, but oh my gosh, he made the number 2, right? I mean, you are super legit. The number of people that made world champs team is still this many, right? Yep. So what I was wondering, and you kind of touched on, Logan, you're 51 seconds. So you knew, okay, I'm not making the team at 51. Assumably I'm not making finals as a 51. So I like your decision. Like, to me, that was a very smart, and that's a tough decision for a 25-year-old, because still to compete in the US championships is, again, that group is still very small that competes in it. So I can see it. I'm going to say easier, but still a hard decision. Yeah. I wondered if you were a 50 flat. So that's on the cusp. You still ain't making the team at 50 flat. We had a lot of pretty good thinking hurdles. But I think, and I could be wrong here, I don't pay attention to it, this minutia, 50 or 49.9 might make finals. Is that fair?
Depending on the year,
depend. Okay. So I wonder, like, if you were on that cusp of like, okay, like 50, that's a different realm. It's like, okay, I know I'm not going to be top 3. Well, I can make finals. What do you think your decision would have been then?
You know what? I don't know. There was a lot going through my head at the time. And I was tired of training. I was like, all right, it's time to move on. But I knew I was still going to be in the sport. It was just not doing it for just me. I was like, all right, maybe it is time just to get back. So it turned into, of course, my first big job interview, right? And I'm nervous as all it could be. And I remember going through I show up, and Debbie Chin, who was the AD at the time, she's now retired. She works within the NCAA still, so she might pop out and hear me talk about her. She was selling her car. She was selling her BMW. So I show up, and she's outside. She must have had it posted on Craigslist or something. She's outside cleaning the windshield of her, and I'm like, I recognize her. She's supposed to be my interview. She's not. What is she doing? And so I sit down in her office. Everybody else is sitting there, and they're all waiting for her, and they're trying to call her. She's like, "Oh no, I'm almost done." She comes in. She's like, "Yep, just sold my BMW." I'm like, "We're like 15 minutes late on this interview. Like, what's this time on?" And so we get through the whole thing. I'm sweating through the whole thing, but they're asking me about training, and I'm like, all right, my education is going to get me through this. Like, for what I learned in undergrad, grad school, how I train as an athlete, learning from Coach Wallen and Coach Van Gilder. I was like, all right, I'm set on this. Like, I can answer any of these questions. They asked me about recruiting. I'm like, good luck. Never done it. Like, I'll go figure it out though. And we're getting through those types of conversations. I've never had to deal with it, but I'll figure it out. And that was kind of like my motto going through the whole interview, was like, you guys know I'm young. You guys know I haven't had any experience with any of this sort of stuff other than training, but we can figure it out. And that was when I got done with that part. I'm walking around with Nick Noheimer, who was the distance coach there. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like, show me all around campus. I'm like, okay. I was like, I don't think this went well because they just realized I don't have the experience, you know? And a day later I get the phone call. Hey, yeah, if you want the job, it's yours. And I was like,
What did you think when you get that call?
I was the happiest I could possibly be, because I'm like, here I am with my first job. But then at the same time, like, oh shoot, I'm a little nervous because I'm now the head men's track and field coach. To give you an idea, there were guys on the team that year that were older than me by like 4 years.
Yeah.
We had a military guy come in that's like, hey, I never used my eligibility. I want to run.
Right.
He's 33, 34 years old. I'm 25. I'm like, whoa,
Right.
wait a second.
Yeah. What was the women's coach that approached you about coming to the dark side?
Shania Williams. Shania
Williams. So, a real superpower of coaches, and again, while you're never just a coach or just a lowly coach,
right.
I'll stop picking on you here in a little bit on that statement, but a real superpower of a coach is being able to see something in someone else, typically a young person as a coach down to an athlete, that they can't yet see in themselves.
Right.
Shanae, this sounds like an issue, an example of where she saw something in you that you couldn't yet see in yourself. Right. What was your relationship with Shanae? Like, did she had watched you compete through as an athlete? Like, she didn't just randomly go up to some guy named Logan and say, hey, do you want to be the head men's coach? Like, she had to have had some like, oh yeah, this guy can do it.
So she started coaching at a young age as well at University of New Haven. And so she had watched me all through my college career running. And it was like, okay, he's now into coaching. He's at a good school. And I'm not sure if she's like, let's take him from the rival school. I don't know. But she knew that I was hungry, eager to start moving on. And so when that all transitioned, like, it was awesome. It was my first experience. Working with her, obviously, me being my first year doing it, or first couple of years coaching by myself, right? Not having to really, I was being able to head a program where she was the head of the women's. It was one of those things where her and I definitely had our battles. We definitely went through some personal stuff of dealing with how to work with each other. And looking back at some situations, I was like, man, I wish we could go back and change way, but like everything that happened within my career, like, it happened for a reason. There was a reason why we had to deal with certain things. So it worked out, I think, for both of us.
How did you have battles? And what I mean by that is you're, and maybe this is perspective of, Logan today versus Logan that day. Cause you're like, oh yeah, I knew nothing, this was my first professional coaching job and I'm the head coach. It would seem like, again, these all from the outside looking in, so we're just kind of trying to dive it to the inside here, that it would have been like, oh, Shanae, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, not as her assistant coach, because you're the head coach, but it's like, oh man, you're going to be my mentor here.
I was a young man, working with a female coach, and it was one of those things like, no, I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to do this my way. I think this is the best way,
Oops.
So yeah.
So now again, perspective, looking back, hindsight's 2020, but now you have experience, things like that.
Yeah.
How did that shape you? Like, when you talk about battles, like maybe you had to take your licks appropriately, like you had to, you were wrong in some situations. How did that experience evolve you, not change you? Because you got to be something for, you're not even a coach at this point. Well, how did it evolve you?
With working with her, working with Debbie Chin or Robin Salters as being the AD, one of the biggest things about them being the AD is they came right out and say, hey, listen, we're going to make you learn how to do everything. So no matter what other job you ever have to go to, it's going to be easier. I knew with working with the administration there, like this is going to be one of my toughest administrations of work that I actually have to do. So I was like, okay, I'm brand new to it. This is a lot of work now. Now I'm sitting here in Ashland and it's like, hey, I want more work. Don't tell our admin that, but that was one of those things was, I want more to do. I want to be able to,
Mhm.
but it was one of those things where I knew, and I now know how to do it all, right?
Mhm.
In terms of looking at different ways to work with the compliance. And obviously it's always ever changing. So I'm going to continue learning,
Mhm.
but it was one of those things where it was like, wait a second, there's people that have gone through their whole career not doing this stuff. Whereas I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is easy. I know the facts behind this because I was forced to literally read through the books and for signing NLIs and stuff of how to go to different people within the departments to get that stuff done, or looking at the different rules of eligibility. Like it wasn't like compliance just sat there and said, oh yep, this is yes or no answers. It was no, figure it out. You're going to have to figure this out because the rest of your career, if you're going to be in coaching, you're going to want to know this because you may not have the same opportunities with needing to know it, you know.
In a typical journey in a coach, it's their 10th or 15th or 20th year, they become their first time head coach. And my favorite question to always ask when we get to that point is, were you ready? This is your first job out the gate. So I'm not even going to ask that because I will assume and probably know you were not ready.
Yep.
When you look back at it now, how many years were you there at New Haven?
Stay there for 2.
Two. So
Yep.
in those 2 years, now
Even
looking
about a quarter, technically.
and looking back at it, what was one of the hardest things for you to learn? Like when you talked about compliance and recruiting and paperwork, things like that. When you look, so you did scheduling, budgeting, you did things that
Yep.
you never, like you didn't even think that a coach did that probably because you've never done it before.
Coach Wallen made it so easy on his side.
Yeah,
You don't even
right.
know that was going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And now looking back, what was, as people that are listening right now, there's going to be future head coaches. There's people who want to be a head coach and don't know all the things that are entailed into it. When you look back now, like, man, you know what was the hardest part? Figuring out this was challenging for me. What would that be?
You know what it was the interpersonal relationships.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, tell me more.
it was just knowing how to talk, communicate, and not only just with the athletes, but with the coaching staff and working through whatever issues were going to arise. We at that time we dealt with um, disciplinary issues with athletes, and one coach wanted to go this route with it, one wanted to go this route. Administration had their view on it, and it was like to be honest with you, we dealt with a rape case and an accusation of a rape, and it was like, okay, who's going to take the role? I'm like I'm mandated right to report. That's all I got to do. That's what you learn, right? Just report it and hands are clean. But then it turned into no, you have to decide what you want to do with your team. By the way, if this comes back this way, then this could happen to you. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm too young to be dealing with this. I did not want to have to deal with that at that time, and too much going on in life to have to worry about that, but also understanding, hey, this could turn into lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
This could turn into more accusations coming down the road if you don't do it the right way. And so I wanted to lean on administration, and administration did not want that on their responsibility. So it became a kind of a like touchy subject of like, how do we get through this? Got through it. I'm here today. I'm still coaching. So
Spoiler alert, it worked out. Yeah.
Sweat that one out.
It's interesting that that's where you went to first, and I love that that's where you went to. We had the athletic director of Iowa State University on the podcast, and I asked him, I was like, hey, you hire a lot of track coaches. What do you look for when hiring a track coach? And he talked about, he goes, honestly, the X's and O's, he goes, that's table stakes. He goes, I expect you, especially at this level at Big 12, et cetera. I'm not even talking to you if I haven't seen that you've made athletes better. He goes, but really, he goes, this is athletics, and specifically as we talk about coaching track and field, is a people person's profession. He's like, you're not just, he goes, you have to absolutely work with 18 to 22, a 17 to 22 year old, because you got to recruit, right? He's like, so absolutely you need to know how to work with young people. He's
Right.
like, but you also are going to be working with our compliance team and our admissions office and our marketing team and our different associate ADs and deputies. He's like, if you can't work within a team with other people, it doesn't matter how good you are at X's and O's. So it's interesting. That's where you went. I love that.
Favorite quote from the New Haven administration was that your livelihood was in the minds and actions of a 17 to
livelihood.
18-year-old kid.
Oh, say that again. I want to hear that again.
Your livelihood was in the minds and actions of a 17 to 18-year-old kid. And they'll do anything they want to do.
And that is why I got out of coaching. I always tell people, it's like, man, when your life, I you'd say the word livelihood, when your livelihood is based on the decisions of 17 and 18-year-old kids, oh, that's tough. Now my livelihood is based on you guys making decisions. It's a little better. It's a little better. I love that. Well, so I'm going to ask the inverse now. There had to be, I'm assuming, some part of the job that you'd never done before that for you, like butter, you just like, oh, okay, I figured this out pretty quick. What was maybe the more easier part or maybe more natural part to learn of becoming a head coach, of all the different duties that you have to do as a head coach?
I would say the two would be, first one would be periodization of training, but
Okay.
I'd studied that for basically 6 years. So it was immediately like, okay, I got to write training, no big deal. Like, and they have to perform at conference and nationals. How do you get somebody to be at their best? And obviously it gets trickier as you get into the faster times and stuff like that. But when you're working with people that were a bunch of walk-ons, it's like, okay, how do you get them to perform? Or how do you get a walk-on to be able to maybe hit a provisional mark? It's like, okay, that's some pretty general training. So that I would say that was one. The other one was honestly recruiting. And early on, I was like, okay, at New Haven, it was one of those things where scholarship budget wasn't all that high. So you had to really convince people that they wanted to be there, not only just for academics, but they wanted to be able to run. And we're in it was a competitive conference at the time, the region. So it was one of those things of, I hate losing. So how am I going to find enough people? And the team was small when I first got there, and their big thing was, hey, you gotta bring the numbers up to 30 people. And so to convince, and my whole thing was like, all right, I got to convince 30 people to love the sport as much as I do. And when you can talk about it all day long, and you can call them up at any time of day and say, hey, this is why you should come here. This is why I love it here. This is why you want to do this. This is why you want to work with me, because this is what we're going to do. It became very easy to build a roster. But what I quickly realized with that building the roster was that without the aid to be in that conference, so at that time, the way it was set up, it was like we're recruiting a bunch of students, that were really invested in their academics, which obviously they're going to college, they need to be, but how much of that was going to be talent? How much of that was going to be have the ability to really progress to be where I wanted to be, where all through, other than my freshman indoor season, I was at the national championship every single year, indoor and outdoor. So to me, nationals is part of the trip, part of what you do in college. You make the national meet, right? So now I'm at a school where my first year coaching as a head coach, indoor and outdoor, we don't make the national meet. And I'm sitting there watching all my friends that also went on into coaching, or watching my coaches, watching my old teammates. They're still at nationals, and I'm just sitting at home twiddling my thumbs trying to go to Memorial Day stuff. And I was like, okay, this is not fun. So it became a drive for mine of going in my second year. How am I getting so many nationals? And luckily I had a girl that had been to national meet on a 4x4 who had felt that same way, and she had the drive, the blood to do it. So it was one of those things where, coach, I want to be there too. So she ended up making the indoor 4, did not All-American, had to deal with her going in ranked last at nationals and coming in right around there and saying, hey, remember, you're not a 400 runner, you're a 400 hurdler. And so she made it outdoors. She ended up All-American outdoors. And it was like, okay, we made it indoor and outdoor. Now she graduated. What do we do? And I'm looking at the team like, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be another rough year. Their recruits coming in just are not ready for it yet. They're gonna need to be juniors or seniors before they can think about it. I'm like, this is not where I want to be. So that's when to be honest, I was like, all right, New Haven, it was good learning. I don't want to be a head coach right now. I want to be able to be in a good program and grow. So I had been talking with coaches, and Leo Mayo at American International was like, hey, my assistant's leaving. I need a new assistant. You want to be my assistant? It was a sprints coach position. So do you want to be my sprints coach? And I'm like, AIC, another school in the conference,
Mm.
A lot of schools that they were one of the younger teams in the conference. They came in with a pretty good budget for recruiting. And so a lot of teams in the conference were like, oh, the American International, all the international kids in the conference. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this could be interesting. Didn't know what I was going to pay. Started going to the interview, and I had actually asked Coach Wallen for a recommendation.
Hmm.
At the time, I was like, Coach, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go there. I'm just looking around. I could try to get a pay raise at New Haven, but just don't know what I'm doing. And a week goes by, and Leo would call me up. We went through the interview. Wasn't going to be paid as much, so I'm like, all right, I'm a young single guy. Let me look at what the cut and pay is going to look like. Do I have? Is it going to be enough to live? I'm like, sure, okay, be enough to live. But now all of a sudden, I can take the stress of having to worry about dealing with the athletes and dealing with a program 24/7.
Right.
And now I can just kind of coach my kids as long as they stay out of trouble, just do whatever my boss asks me, and I'm safe. I'm good. Just coach fast kids. And that was the big click. I was like, now I'm going to go to American International. They recruit internationally. I can bring in, as long as he gives me the go about to do it. If I can find somebody fast internationally, I'll bring them in, and we're gonna go to nationals. Like, that was the plan. And with a week turnaround, everything had changed. I was like, yep, going AIC. This is like November. So this is cross country champion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm up at Franklin Pierce for one cross country meet with New Haven. 2 weeks later, we go to the conference championship, and I'm showing up with completely different colors on. So it didn't rub well with a lot of people in the conference. It's particularly my old head coach that coached me for 6 years. We never really talked it out, but it was a mutual, like, I understood, like, yeah, it was probably a jerk move to not let him know, hey, yeah, I'm going to the closer rival in terms of competition.
Yeah.
Because the AIC had just done the Triple Crown for the first time in the conference, and now all of a sudden a guy that you coached is going to help coach their sprinters.
Yeah.
And knowing, okay, now all of his knowledge that he had taught me in the sprints is now going to go move to a whole other school.
It's so funny to hear you explain that. And that's very common. That's not unique where I've heard.
And so when I first did it, I was like, why is he mad at me? Like, and it was more so interpersonal communication. I just was, okay, I'm to myself. Let me just make my switch and deal with it. And it wasn't like people could just deal with it easily. It was, wait a second, we never talked this out. Like, he was my second dad for 6 years.
Yeah.
My parents were 3 hours away.
Yeah, it's just interesting, the tribalism that we have in sports for that, because like, as you're describing that, and again, that's not uncommon. I've heard that story before, where people are like, oh, then I went to the conference and I didn't sit well with people and blah blah, all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, when a kid goes from Burger King to McDonald's, no one blinks an eye. No one says, oh, you went to the competition. When you go from IBM to Google, no one says, oh, they'll say maybe you got poached or whatever, but no one's like, oh, I can't believe, that I don't care that it was better for you and your family or desires.
Yeah.
But
my whole looks was like
college tribalism,
similar, but like, look at the NFL.
Right.
I was like, this happens all the time.
All the time.
But looking back on it, I was like, oh, what I didn't do was sit down and call up Coach Wallen and be, hey, Coach, like, this is the best opportunity.
What I'm getting to is, did you need to?
I think if we had
I don't know,
but
I don't know, because on one hand, I'm with you on when you talk about interpersonal relationships, relationships with people. On the other hand, I go back to what our most popular episode, Boo Schexnayder, and Boo, and I tell you, Logan, if you haven't listened to it, and if you're listening right now and you haven't listened to it, there's a reason why it's our most popular episode. I will highly encourage you to go listen to it. If you've listened to it, go listen to it again. And what we had a really frank discussion about the profession of coaching. Get away from what's on your chest and knowledge of X's and O's. You are a professional. You are making money for yourself, your family, your passions, your charities, etc. Just like someone who works for IBM, Gill, Wendy's, whatever, right? Money is important.
Right.
I will never not say that. And what he talked about was, you've got to do better for yourself when you have the opportunity, especially as a younger coach, to retire one day and things like that. So if your move to AIC, where, and I know you said it was less money in that sense, but it was better for you. It sounded like it was better for you for mental health, for you, what you thought professionally for yourself at that point, et cetera.
What I
And
valued and what I wanted to coach stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yep.
instead of the tribalism of like, oh, they went to another school in the conference, or I can't believe they did. And I'm not throwing Coach Wong under the bus here either. I mean, this is, again, this is very, very common, especially in track and especially in sports. Instead of being like, oh, I'm so happy for you. Are you happy, Logan? Great. Then I'm happy for you. The tribalism, like, oh, you went to, like the audacity of the you went inside conference thing. It's the same with athletics, by the way, or with athletes. Like
Mhm.
I don't like the, you can transfer anywhere you want, except for in our conference. I was like, what? But
That's
that
pretty
makes,
much the GMAC now.
yeah, it's like, it makes no sense to me. Like, what do you mean? It's if I want to go from LSU to Florida, God bless you. I
Right.
don't care if it's in the same conference. I don't care if I'm going to see you twice a year minimally at the conference meet. Who can? It's your education. It's your life. Knock yourself out here. I mean, what are we talking about here? So it's just interesting as you're describing that. Sorry, as you're describing that, it's just like, why? It's this tribalism. I think the difference is because it's sports. Because when it's the other examples I gave, IBM, Facebook, etc., while we do have pride of having Facebook, as our employer, it ain't like having Ashland over there or Florida State. It's like, oh, there's people that support me because I'm a Seminole, and only because of that. There's
Right.
that tribalism with it. So it's just interesting the dynamic in sport as a profession, coaching here, and how that that relates to being happy for someone, or I can't believe they didn't talk to me, and it's like, I don't know. It's just odd to me.
Yeah.
And it's easier for it to be odd to me because I'm outside the circle now. I coached for 10 years, went to 5 different institutions. So trust me, I'm the guy who hopped around too, with different places. I never went inside conference though. But I don't know that that would have been weird to me. I don't know that I can't think back, and it was a long time ago now, I don't think there was ever a situation where I was like, ooh, I can't even like consider that job because that's inside the conference. Like, I don't know. It's just odd to me now. Okay, so you go to AIC. Now, this is where you actually reached out to me, is when you were at AIC.
Right.
Tell us about this. I don't know much about AIC either. Tell us about the school and maybe some cultural difference, and how did it go switching to that school for you professionally?
So it's a small school, primarily athletes. I think what we were talking, there's only like 700, 800 people on campus.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's a tiny school. Majority of them, like I said, are athletes. And when I got there, it it was well known that track and field was one of the newer sports, but also one of the powerhouse of sports in the school. So it was kind of
And
fun.
where's it located?
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, are you in Springfield? I've been there
Yeah.
once. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like the basketball hall of fame is at the bottom of the hill, the casino now, and then go up to the top of the hill, and there's the school. Right,
Okay.
it's right
So
in the city.
I've got to admit, the reason I was in Springfield because I was at that casino. So I was right by campus. Okay.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
you
Very
were
cool.
you were probably about a 3-minute drive up to
Oh,
it. Yep.
dang it. Shoot. Okay. All right.
Um, but it was one of those things where the biggest drive that I had there was to go there was one, I didn't have to be a head coach
Mm,
at the time. I was like,
mhm,
you know what, I can just sit and coach. And my biggest is I wanted to learn at that time.
mhm,
Like I didn't want to have to focus all my time and energy into doing the budgeting and
mhm,
travel, and like more so, hey, head coach says this is what I need done this week, or this is what I need done today, or this is what I need done within the next 5 minutes. All right, I'm free to do it. Let's do it. But it was more so I could spend time researching, training, researching eh, different techniques, looking at different drills, and
mm,
actually spend time learning how to be a better coach overall for
mhm,
the athletes, and the scientific side again. And that also got me into more of, hey, like AIC's like, let me help you go to the conventions. Let me give you some higher ed with doing some of the professional development stuff. So I had a lot
mhm,
of USATF ones were done with at AIC. So it was one of those things where I was able to learn more. And then my whole biggest part was I was now able to say I didn't just have to recruit in the US.
mhm,
We were, hey, let's bring in 2 or 3 international kids each year. That way, distancing was always going to be funded. Coach Mayo loved his cross country, loved his indoor and outdoor track. He knew to have a good team all 3 seasons, he had to have his distance runners. So he would make sure he had at least 7 to 9 athletes that weren't paying a dime for school, that were funded through athletic aid, FAFSA aid if they were domestic, and then their academic aid. And he did a heck of a job with it. It was a cross country team. He found the international kids in Kenya, France, England, and I'm sitting back my first year, like watching them do it. I'm like, okay, so I know you've had some Jamaican sprinters, you've had some Jamaican hurdlers, you had some people from Haiti. I was like, when can I get mine? I was like, when can we start recruiting for the sprinters? So I was like, we don't have them right now. And the biggest drive that administration told me was like, hey, we need you to help build the women's team. Like, funny, you hire a guy that was just the men's head coach,
Right.
to coach a women's, to basically build a women's program. And so Leo and I had sat down and had the conversations with administration, like, why are the men doing so well, but the women aren't? And the big thing came down to, he was trying to recruit a bunch of distance women, and that just wasn't panning out. And so they were like, why don't you put recruiting women on Logan? I was like, okay. I was like, no big deal. Like, find 1 or 2 internationals and we'll find a bunch of people in the area. And so we're quickly going on to look at who are the top female sprinters in the area. And down in New Haven, Connecticut, it was fun recruiting out of there, because I'm like, oh, that's Southern Connecticut's backyard. That's New Haven's backyard. Like, this is fun. I can pull kids out of there up here, kids right in Springfield, Mass, local homegrown people, and then up in Lowell. And I was like, it's weird how we found those 3 areas, because it's more of the less, I mean, they're very developed areas, but less funded areas of the states. And so all of a sudden, like, I'm looking at that niche, and I'm like, okay, so they get better fast food packages. And now I'm finding people that have 3 O's and higher out of these groups. But AIC, wanting people to come to school, we're willing to take people at 2 O's. So now all of a sudden there's this influx of, hey, I can recruit quite a bit of people. So our women's team, within a year or 2, we built it up. And unfortunately, a couple of them bad attitudes, and didn't want that to go with the way the future of the program, the way we wanted the program to go. So we had said our goodbyes to a couple of the girls as they came in and had left and went on to do other things, or they just stayed within the school and like, hey, coach, running's not for me anymore, after they got to college. But Leo and I were like, listen, we're going to build a dominant women's team. And he's like, I'm going to let you do it with the budget. He's like, if you need some sprinters, go ahead, get them. He's like, if we can get a couple distance runners, that's great. We'll make sure we have a cross country team at first, but we need something, but build it with the sprints and jumps. I was like, okay. So that my first year is, all of a sudden we get to May and we're like, hey, we still sitting on quite a bit of money, because we hadn't gone internationally yet for the women. I was like, all right, let's see what we can find. Next, I think I was at home or up in New York or someplace, and he goes, hey, check out the name Roxanne Foster. So I typed the name and I was like, doesn't come up anywhere. He goes, no, IAAF it. So I put it on IAAF. All of a sudden her times come up and she's like a 14-1 hurdler. And I was like, yeah, like, let's get her. And he's like, oh, what makes you think we can get her? I'm like, she's from Jamaica. I was like, do you have a connection? Why'd you come up with her? He's like, yep. He's like, one of my coaching friends has a connection to her coach, and she's looking for a school. I'm like, all right. Like, let's get her. So we're quickly having a conversation with her. Sure enough, she signed. And she came in, and Rox and I had quite the history of 3 years together. We went through COVID together. Found out a lot about people during COVID, of how some are either going to train or some are going to take time off and come up with excuses. She, I think, went more of the latter route, unfortunately, but it was always one of those things where she was a competitor and she knew I loved to win and she loved to win. So it was always, when we're away from each other, she's not going to train as hard. When we're back together, it's okay, Rox, let's get ready. Championships are coming, conference is coming, now nationals coming. Like, what are we going to do to get there? And she always found a way to get there. She always found a way to PR at the end of the season. So it was fun working with her. Now she's now at Minnesota State with Chris Parno. So
Oh yeah.
bless Parno for having her.
Yeah.
Hopefully she ends up this year. I think this year or next year might be her last year eligibility. So I think next year is. So hopefully she can turn her season around a little bit.
Logan, somebody said I got to check myself for the way I responded. You a little bit ago, you said, they said, hey, we're gonna, we haven't been doing great on the women's side, so why don't we, put Logan's focus over there?
Yeah.
And you said, kind of funny, they hired they told this to a guy who was the head men's coach to do
Right.
that, and I kind of was like, yeah. I have to check myself, because if the reverse was true, I would not have blinked an eye. I think of someone like Gill podcast alum, Beth Alfred Sullivan. She gets a job of a men's program. I don't go, huh, kind of funny. They hired a woman who was the women's head coach. I'm like, oh, of course,
Right.
she's a great coach. So I just had to check myself there. Like, oh yeah, that's not. I mean, you coached, on the track and field side at the very least. I don't pretend to know anything about basketball and baseball, softball, etc. But I do believe in the power of track coaches, like the leadership and knowledge and experience that they have, that they can coach any sport, to be real frank with you. So just had to check myself. I was like, well, why did I have that reaction? That's not true at all for this example or the reverse. So how did it go? You talked about international recruiting. Recruiting is its own skill set.
Right.
International recruiting, which I did not do very much at all as a college coach, so I don't have much experience there. Is it different? It's kind of funny. I think about when we have women coaches on the podcast, I work really hard at not asking the stereotypical question of like, well, what's it like coaching men, and what was your experience? Because it's, again, 100 meters, 100 meter, and certainly there are some differences on how you coach a male versus a female, even in the same event. But you as a woman doesn't necessarily change how you might coach versus a man might coach it. Is it an unfair question? Again, I don't have experience with international recruiting. Is it an unfair question to say, well, how was it coaching international, or I'm sorry, recruiting international? Because is it the same? It's just different tackling, and because it's there's visas and things like that. I don't know.
I think there's more workload with it. There's more workload, but I personally, as long as you have the connections to the coaches or clubs overseas, I think it might be easier, because those coaches are saying, hey, this person, they already know what budgets are. They, like, depending on what country you're looking at, we either know, okay, they don't have a budget. They're going to have to figure out a way to completely fund this student athlete. So if you're going to get one from there, they better be good. You're not going to want to put all the athletic aid, all the academic aid into one person that doesn't pan out to be able to do either multiple events or get to the highest level. So that's the cool part, I think, with international recruiting, is majority of the time the coach is saying, hey, these are who we have, this is what their budgets are, and you can either say yes or no. Right. Versus on the domestic side, it's more so there's other avenues to get the money. So it's like, okay, they might not have the complete budget, but can we put this scholarship on, or can we get this diversity grant on, or how's their FAFSA aid look? And it creates a little bit more of a web, I guess, of where everything can come from. But there's more schools now that can recruit domestically than they can recruit internationally. So now you're fighting with other schools. So now you have to turn in and say, okay, what's our facilities like compared to theirs? What's our academic programs compared to theirs? Where are we located? And so at AIC, we're pretty unique with the international kids. Everybody knows of Boston. Everybody knows about New York City. So you tell them how close we are to both of those. And it's funny, we had a place called Forest Park near AIC, and a lot of kids thought when we would mention, oh yeah, our distance runners go to Forest Park to train, they thought we had a number of recent recruits that I was talking with a couple of years ago. I'm like, yeah, coach, every time Forest Park was mentioned, we thought we were talking about Central Park. That they wanted to go run in Central Park because it's known overseas. Oh, it's a beautiful place to run. And they're like, yeah, we want to go run Central Park. They never got to run Central Park when they were at AIC. But they never asked that question. Wait, you mean Central Park? No, they started Forest Park, but nobody just names out random parks.
And you weren't inferring Central Park. So
right,
that's cool. Sure,
we're just talking about Forest Park.
Yeah. Now it's interesting. I heard you say two different things that feel on opposite ends of the spectrum, but maybe you can help me tie it together. You started off, and I hear this a lot with international recruiting. You talked about the relationships. If you have a relationship with a club or a coach, and what's interesting is I hear that a lot, and I'm like, especially like if you use like a country like Jamaica as an example, it's a very small populated country compared to the whole of US. And I swear every coach I talk to, that when we talk about international recruiting, will say, oh yeah, well, I've got a relationship in Jamaica. I'm like, well, how many relations, like, oh, I've got my guy. I'm like, well, how many? There's only so many guys. There's only so many guys down there. Like, everybody's got a guy, but there's only so many coaches down there. So for one, you talked about relationship, which I think that's important, because you got to have trust on who, that club or high school coach in Jamaica is going to send their kids to, it's a big trip to go internationally for school. So I get that. But then you also said what I think is on the other side of the spectrum. You talked about the aid package. So it's going to be a full ride because they need that and things like that. and I've heard of the examples of where someone's like, "Hey, I'd love to go to your school, but I can't because I need a full ride, so I'm going to go to whatever's deemed as this lesser school," right?
Right.
So that seems two different things: relationships versus just straight up financial situation. How are those two married together in your experience?
On the international side,
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's kind of like a yes or no thing. Like, hey, like, do we have money for that person? And there was one coach during COVID that I was talking with, and he had 2 400-meter hurdlers, men, that I was recruiting, and one was a 54-second guy and one was a 52-second guy out of high school. And I'm talking with Leo, like, hey, like, we got the opportunity to get 2 different guys. What money do we have? Just shoot, 400 hurdle guy, I want both. Let's figure out a way to train them together. They're from the same high school in Jamaica. Like, let's keep them together. And he's like, unfortunately, we can only get one. So not being able to really see the kid, not watch him train, understanding both of them want to come. Now you got to make a decision. And you ask the coach, hey, which one are you taking? The coach is like, well, one's 2 seconds faster. That's a no-brainer, right? So we went with the one that was 2 seconds faster. And now I look back at it, and the other one ended up going to Lincoln University out in Missouri, and he's an All-American. The other one is living in New York somewhere, not doing track. And he came in and he had transferred out after us for a year, and we're like, listen, this isn't going to work out. You're not running what you said you could run. I'm not. And maybe it was COVID that got him. We all joke about how COVID got an athlete that he didn't train through it, probably put on a bunch of weight. I saw his times, and he had legitimately ran 52 seconds. And with us first year, working really hard with him, I'm like, I can barely get you to 58. He just wasn't fit, constantly and injured, constantly going through things that 19, 20-year-old kids are going to go through and have as excuses, So I was like, dang, could have went with 54 guys.
Right.
Guy now.
Yeah. See, that's why you just go get all of them.
Right. That's
I mean, never turn a kid down. Okay.
Like, can we have one less distance runner so you don't have 9 guys funded? You only need 7 for cross country. Can you give me one more? Can you give me the 8 for one of those guys? Now we can have 2 hurdlers.
What is your experience? What can you help us understand with coaching international kids? And what I mean by that is a little bit to what we alluded to earlier about, when we just look at domestically, when a kid comes from high school to college, even if it's like the most smallest travel. So let's say there's a kid that went to Springfield High School and then goes to AIC, same town. So there's no travel concerns. They know the weather. Their friends are still there. So that'd be a very easy transition all the way to, a kid is coming to AIC when you were there from California. It's like, oh man, maybe the weather is extremely different. The culture is different. The accents are different. Away from mom and dad, time zones are different. That'd be a little harder transition. An even harder transition in my mind would be someone coming from an international country. I've traveled slightly internationally, and I know there are times where it's like, oh man, I don't speak the language natively. I can't read a street sign. I can't even call back home because of the international calling rates or whatever, things like that, SIM cards and all that kind of stuff. What do you have to be most cognizant about your international athletes as they come to you to help them acclimate, be satisfied and happy with their lives athletically, academically, and socially?
I think just being there for them, because the biggest thing the one memory I have of when our first group of internationals that I was there for, was we brought in Ezra Mutai, who ended up winning 2 national titles for us, and we brought in Titus Kiptoo. Ezra won 10K outdoors and 10K cross country race. And they had came the night before, and the next morning, I think it was like a Saturday morning, I'm just driving around campus, not paying any attention. All of a sudden, I see 2 guys just standing in the middle of State Street. State Street's the biggest road going through Springfield, and they're standing in the middle of it, just looking back and forth. And State Street divides where our athletic facilities are and our academic buildings are. And the kids either usually take a shuttle across there, they drive across themselves, or they'll use the crosswalk. So these 2 kids are not staying in the crosswalk. Mind you, this is beginning of August. This isn't middle of school year, where you can see other people moving around. There's no other
Mm.
kids on campus other than a couple of the teams moving in that don't know these two, these two guys just sitting in the middle, and I pull up in my Jeep and I'm looking at them like, they don't look like they know what they're doing. They're just lost. And so I pull up, I'm like, guys, and they both look like, yes, sir. I was like, you guys need help? And they're like, yes. And I was like, where are you headed? They're like, we don't know. They
Oh.
didn't know, because they had moved into their dorm late at night. They didn't have any bedding.
Oh.
And we had our grad assistant at the time go pick them up from the airport and bring them back, with the whole transportation stuff that we had to go through with the school. And so they know where they're going. They know where to find anything. And they were, if came to find out, they had found food. They went to some grocery store that we had, like a bodega, that they had walked in and just asked for food,
Mm.
thinking like, oh, you just get free food. They just walked in and said, hey, we're hungry. And luckily the people were kind enough to give them food. They knew that they had to be athletes walking around. So yeah, they needed something. So they were fed there, but they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know what else to do with the day. Their phones hadn't been switched over yet to being able to work. They didn't know how to hook up to the Wi-Fi, nothing.
Yeah.
So they're lost. And so me not knowing exactly who they were yet, not recognizing, oh, these are two Kenyans that we picked up, and that we were going to be coaching. And I'm like, what's your guys' names? And Ezra's like, I'm Ezra. And I was like, and you? He's like, Titus. I'm like, oh, I was like, you're our two recruits. Nice to meet you. I'm Coach Sharpe. And they didn't even know who I was, because I wasn't on any of the
Right.
calls, and it was all Leo. And so I was like, I coach sprints and hurdles. I was like, I'll be around all the time for cross country. Like, you guys ever need anything? Here's my number. They're like, how does that work? And I was like, what do you mean, how's it work? They're like, our phones don't work. And I'm like, and that's when it dawned on me, they were completely lost. And I was like, all right, I was like, I'll get your phones to work with Wi-Fi. I was like, I don't know how to connect right now to get your American numbers working, or if we're even going to do that. Like, that's all on Coach Mayo. Like, I'll get a hold of him. We'll start figuring this stuff out. So then it turned into, hey, they need bedding. They need their IDs for the school. They had nothing. It was like, they looked like two people just not allowed to be around, And it was the whole first week of every day, all they knew was come to the office, at 8 a.m. One of us was going to be there, and they would come in. Okay, what's the next thing we can work on? And that's, I think, the biggest thing I learned about the international kids is, once they get to the campus, you have to guide them through each and every step until they stop coming by to ask you for that. But you have to tell them, hey, you have to come to me every day. Because otherwise it'd just be like you being dropped off in some random country.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That's where I tell you, I said, I went to Springfield because I went to the MGM there.
Yep.
I like to play poker a lot. And I was down in Costa Rica, and I went to a poker room there. And it was one of the more humbling learning experiences I've ever had. I'm sitting at a table with 8 other people, and they're speaking Spanish, because that's the native language down there. There's a TV on, so I think soccer was on, of course. That's stereotypical, but soccer was on, and it's in Spanish. And I remember, I know nothing in Spanish. See, that's all I know. I'm sorry. And so I remember, like, every time I'd go to bed, I'd look at the dealer. I'm like, 25. Like, I want to make sure I wasn't betting the wrong amounts. And, and it's a poker game, so these guys are all chatting and laughing, and I'm just like, I know, like, it made me
In your mind,
realize,
you're
like,
like, am I being taken advantage of right now?
well, I didn't
Money.
think that
Okay.
necessarily. Yeah, because it was a legit casino, so I felt like that was okay. But it was just like, you're isolated. I can't contribute to that story. I can't understand.
Right.
That's, when you think about, like, when I think about my other times when I'm at poker table, when you think about your times around your buddies and stuff, and there's side conversations going on, you overhear the conversation, like, oh, they're talking about that game 2 years ago, or, oh, they're talking about their old girlfriend. I remember Lisa, whatever, blah, blah. Nothing. I could,
Yeah.
I could understand tones, but when they, when the punchline was given, they started laughing. I didn't understand the punchline. And I started thinking about when I lived in Vegas and was playing poker professionally, and we'd have, 8 English speaking people there, and one person from Asia or from Mexico or wherever that was not a native speaker. And they were always quiet. And it's like, oh, now I get it.
Yep.
The rest of us were speaking in English, talking about whatever, the game, relationships, travels, ha ha ha, jokes. And they were like, yeah, I don't understand a word. And am I doing
Right.
anything wrong? Am I betting wrong? I'm trying to bet this. It was real. Like, it really taught me a lot. It was the most impactful. And I've played at almost 400 different places around the country and now Costa Rica. Uh, it was the most impactful poker game I've ever played, because it taught me,
Yep.
like, oh, this is what other people are going through. This is what Titus and Ezra were going through. They were in the middle of the street. I can't call coach. I
Right.
don't know where to go. I don't even have betting. I don't have money for food. They have literally none of the basics, right? Food, safety, shelter. They don't have any of that.
Yep.
All they have is each other. Thank goodness. Like, I can only can't imagine how scary it had to be for
Well,
them.
and so that's where I learned, like, when we're international recruiting, I noticed we always got two or more people from one region or one country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they may not have known each other, but we would try to plan it so they arrived at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it became, okay, this is going to be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
This is your first friend here.
But can you imagine? And I think that's important. That probably helped for sure. I feel like that would help. But can you imagine the same in reverse? So let's use Costa Rica, Logan. We're shipping you down to Costa Rica, and we know you don't know Spanish and read the street signs. So we're going to send someone from Montana to also go down there because they're American. And you two meet up and you're like, hey, Joe, hi, Logan. Does your phone work? No, mine either. Do you have any money? No, I don't either. What are we going to do? I don't know, but we can at least
Like amazing
understand
friends.
I guess we can understand each other. So that's
Yeah.
cool. But I also don't know who you are, Joe. Like, I mean, I'm supposed to automatically trust you just because you're
Right.
also an American. Like, I could see where it could help, because at least you have a communication, but they're still
Yeah.
like, I don't know who the heck you are. Titus and Ezra not knowing if they were from the same
Yeah, there's
school or
the,
whatnot.
the same training group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but think about the same, like, yeah, okay, you're also from Kenya, but whatever, you're from 100 miles. Kenya's a big country. You're from
Right.
100 miles over there. I don't know who you are, but we can speak the same country, but we have different accents and
Yep.
dialect. It helps, but it's still
It's rough.
rough. Like, I have a lot. I'm literally kind of, you painted a great picture, because I'm literally in my head seeing this picture of these two guys standing there, like, what have we
Cars
gotten
going by,
ourselves
like
into?
they're just standing there.
Yeah. And then the stranger pulls up in a Jeep, and it's, there's a little bit like, okay, someone's coming to help, but there's also a little bit of like, are they coming to help?
Right.
And then
There's
I
so
can't
much.
imagine the relief when you said, oh, hey, I'm also a track coach. Like, oh, okay. A little bit more trust now. He's one of us. He's track. So, okay, that's
Yep.
good. He's a coach. Okay. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow.
Then on the contrary too, we had we brought in two Jamaicans in the middle of January.
Oh, yeah. See,
So
yeah,
they're
yeah,
going
yeah.
from 80 degrees to I
Yeah.
think the second week there it was -5. And it was the funniest thing watching them walk in. Like, I felt so bad. One walks in with shorts into the airport. I'm like, you got pants? I'm like, no.
He's like, well, I got pants for.
I'm like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm gonna have to get you to the store really quickly. I
Yeah.
hope I was like, do you do any currency exchange? Like, are you ready? And he's like, oh, I got money, but the money's still not the American money. So you're trying to change over currencies. I'm like, oh, this is rough.
Dude.
I swear, the first couple weeks for them, once they get through that, it's like now you're looking at shots that they have to get to
Oh,
be
yeah.
all the immunizations. And they're like, why am I getting this? I'm like, to be honest with you, I was like, I don't know. The NCAA requires it. We've got to do it.
I am a very anti-negative recruiting, but this seems like one where it'd be fair if they were trying to choose between Springfield, Massachusetts, and I'll say Troy, Alabama, because that's where I'm from. And they were like, yeah, Mr. Jamaican athlete, it's going to be -5 when you go up there, right? And like, it'll be 80 down. Like, that feels like a fair. That's not negative recruiting. That's just laying out facts. And you may be able, maybe you want to go experience snow because you lived in Jamaica your whole life, but you just need to know, man.
Yeah,
It's cold is cold.
there's some things that aren't always mentioned in recruiting.
I'm not
I
sure
always
that.
tell it whenever we let an athlete meet with, or like a prospective student athlete meet with a current student athlete, I always ask, like, did you guys talk about the good, bad, and the ugly? Okay. So we're all clear. We don't like
I
these
was
things
about
that
to say, I'm not sure, because I know what you were alluding to when you said, some things aren't said in recruiting. I get that. It's one of those. I think it's one of those little dirty little secrets of coaching, and we're going to talk specifically about track, but I'm not sure that it's not for all sports as well. But when they don't mention something, it's like, well, I'm not lying, because I didn't say the opposite.
Right.
I just didn't tell them that it was going to be -5. They're smart kids. They can Google the temperature in Springfield. It's like, I don't think that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't. And I'm not saying that's what you did there. I'm just saying in general of coaching when that goes on. I don't think that's right for a couple of reasons. One, while it may not be lying as the definition of lying, omission of fact is also
Right.
a form of lying, right? But the other part of it is too is, a coach will also complain about kids transferring out of their program for whatever reasons. And it's like, well, were you upfront and completely honest with them from the get-go? I mean, like literally, hey,
Right.
Mr. Jamaican athlete, just letting you know it's going to be -5. Now we have an indoor facility and things like that, but you got to walk through it to go to class. And you might be in a snowball fight from just kids being kids. That's going to suck maybe for you. Have you thought about that? And let them make a decision, because if they make a decision, hey, I coach, I love you, I think the school would be awesome for me. I just can't see myself surviving in that weather. Even I know it's just, you told me it's basically Thanksgiving through March or whatever. I just can't. Good for you, kid. You made the right decision, because you didn't come to my place and then transfer, which is worse in my opinion.
Right.
I know it hurts as a coach to hear the no, but that's actually your second best answer, because then you can move on to the next recruit.
Yep.
How many times the recruits don't tell you no when you're just like, man, look, if it's a no, just tell me so I can move on. Right? Yes is the best answer. So I think being that upfront, completely upfront. We had a kid. We're hiring right now. We're hired. In fact, when you're listening to this, our new hires start next week, and I'm super excited. One's from Division II, actually. By the way, yeah. You're gonna be excited about her. She's amazing. And one, I actually kind of a little hint I alluded to earlier in today's podcast, but we were interviewing another young man, and he would have checked all the boxes culturally. Education, like I think he would have been really, really good. And he couldn't see himself living in Illinois. Now it's funny, he's from the Jersey area, but now had moved down to Florida for some jobs, and he likes Florida. He likes the beaches and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, Champaign, it's cold again, and college town, I kind of like the big city. And he ended up we offered him, and he turned us down. And a couple of us were like, oh, that sucks. And I was like, no, that's awesome. And so it was like, Mike, what do you mean? We need help. We're shorthanded. And it's like, no. He would have come here and been gone in a year, which is no good for any of him or us. I was like, he made the right decision. If he can't see himself living here, I'm so happy for them. Like, I'm so proud that he made the smart decision and didn't take the more money to come here and stayed where he was. That's awesome for him. It's same with recruits. If they don't come to you because of whatever what you think might be a dumb reason, weather, and you're like, well, dude, I've lived up here my whole life, you can do this. Hey, they made the right decision.
You look at it like Roxanne had came from Jamaica, lived in Springfield, Mass for 3 years with me. Now she's in Minnesota. So weather wasn't an issue for her.
No, and it's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm from Alabama, so I always joke all the time, I hate the winters as well. And I always joke, during I travel so much in December, January, February, because I go down to Texas. Texas gets a lot of my attention during those times because the hot weather, blah, 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 that kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, yes, we can all survive in these we're not talking about Antarctica weather, and we're not talking about Sahara Desert on the hot side. You can survive in Austin, Texas as well. If you're from New Jersey, you can do it, right?
Yep.
It's not always the weather, but it is the weather for some people, right? It exactly is. Yeah. All right. So how long were you at AIC, and why are you not still at AIC?
I was there for 3 years. There for 3 years as an assistant. 4th year was a transition. Leo had left going in my 4th year. They decided to name me interim director, which is new.
You're back to the head coach.
Yeah, I'm back to the head coach.
A lot more knowledgeable now than you were 4 years earlier.
Still to this day, I told Leo, I don't want this. Like, I don't want to be a head coach. And he's like, you'll be fine. He's like, I prepared you for it. He's like, AIC better than most of the coaches there. I'm like, okay. Like, he's like, just hire good people around you. I'm like, okay. So I kept Rich Hart around me, who has been all over the East Coast recruiting, coaching, and has just through experience just knew a lot of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is probably the best guy to keep around to help me out, So it was him and I for a good portion of it. We had hired so I had to end up having to coach cross country because we didn't get a distance coach in time. We hired a distance coach literally at the end of cross country. And so the last year there, the sprinters took kind of the back burner, because I'm like, all right, I can coach sprints. Like, we'll figure that out when the season gets here. As long as you guys are going through the fall training, I don't need to be there to necessarily see that. we can get some technical work in here and there, but you're going to be getting your fitness and working on being ready to run fast, right? And I got to focus on coaching distances. That's not my thing, you know. So we won the women's and the men's conference in East Region title
In cross
in
country?
cross country. Yeah.
Dude,
And
you're not a sprint hurdles coach. You're a distance coach.
don't say that every day. And it
We'll,
was
we'll
funny
see if
because
you actually heard that. If in the maybe he makes me edit that out. We'll see. We'll see.
it was funny because Leo had told me, he's like, "Oh, if you want my training, feel free. I'll send it to you." And I never once asked for it. And it was because I was like, "Nope, I'm gonna do this myself. Rich is gonna help me. We're gonna put this together. We're gonna make the team successful."
Yeah.
And sure enough, it did. Now, mind you, knowing that that was happening, we brought in 2 Kenyan female distance runners that went 1-2 in the region. But we knew, hey, we got the money. Let's go recruit some pretty good athletes. We had Callum Elson come in, who ended up winning the mile after the DQ and 1500 outdoors that year. But we knew we had some talent, and we had built up the rest of the team around it. So it worked. We looked at it at our conference meet and the regional meet. We didn't have to run Ezra or Callum, and we still would have won it. So it was a good year for the men. Women, it was the first time ever winning the conference and regional title. So that was
Okay.
huge.
See, we're going to talk a lot about international recruiting now. So what's interesting, and I'm assuming, so you correct me. The reason you just said what you just said, you said we brought in 2 Kenyans, we brought in 2 kids from Kenya, and we won. But if they would not have run, we still would have won. No one makes that qualify for anything else. No one says, hey, if we had taken our 2 Floridians off, we still would have won. I believe you said it because there is a stigma that I'm doing air quotes for those who are not watching us on YouTube, that you buy international athletes. Oh, they went to Kenya and bought their championship because
So we never went there.
No, that's what I'm asking. But why is there that stigma? Why is it just because a kid is from international, there is this thought of you went and bought your champion, you went and bought your 100-meter champion, you went and bought your cross country. But no one says that about anybody. No one. If AIC went and got a bunch of kids from California, a great track state, arguably a top 3 track state, no one would said, well, yeah, they went and bought it because they want to get a bunch of Californians. Why is there this stigmatism to international recruiting for that?
I think, especially in Division II, there's not a budget to travel all the international kids over to do an overnight visit, do an official visit, that we're kind of saying, hey, here's the money, here's what we have to offer. And it didn't happen at AIC. We got them to all progress and run faster, but
does that not occur domestically too? We're talking, you said Division II specifically. I know there's the budgets are less. Are there, what percentage do you think of domestic recruits are you actually either A, going to see home visit or see them at a track meet during their high school time, or B, bringing them on campus for official visits?
I think, like, currently I'm at Ashland. I think every recruit that we're bringing over 50 kids next year. We'll get to that, but
okay.
I think of all those 50 something recruits that we have, they've all seen campus.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So I think that's a big difference.
So there's a disparity between domestic and again, we're globally speaking. We're speaking for everybody, which is never fair.
Right.
So there is a difference between domestic people coming to campus or getting a home visit versus international, maybe more sight unseen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's that, and I think that there's a whole stigma with there's some distance runners or international kids, specifically distance runners in our what we're talking about right now with the cross country, that they run really well in their home country and then come to the US and don't necessarily run faster.
Oh, so, no, I do that. Okay. All right.
And you have to look at the altitude conversion and stuff like that. But I know, like, looking at the ones that we brought in, they definitely ran a lot faster. So
I guess I have heard that, because I was like, I don't know if I heard that, but I have heard that with like sprinters and jumpers, because there was for a while kind of a cultural shift from specifically Jamaica and Caribbean of athletes. Like, you don't have to go to the US to become, like Usain Bolt didn't go, wasn't running. He obviously became, he's pretty good. So it became this, like, you don't have to go to the US. You can stay here on their domestic soil and still become a superstar. So because, again, the stereotype was you go to college, well, they're going to run you in 5 events every race. You're going to get burnt out, when that's not necessarily true, globally speaking.
The thing that we had too with the Kenyans is, like, a lot of them going on to be doctors.
Oh, yeah.
And bringing our medicine ideology back to
right,
Kenya and stuff like that. So that was one of the coolest things when because came from Southern Connecticut State School, not much international recruiting, if any. To go to AIC, there were like one of my stigmas. I was like, oh, AIC, yeah, it's international recruiting, but it wasn't necessarily just bringing in athletes. It was what made it unique to have them there. That there's people looking for a whole new way of life, getting out of a third world country, being able to have the American dream.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. That's why I asked,
Yeah.
why is there that stigma? Because to me, like, I don't like borders. Like, I don't believe, for my faith, I don't believe God made borders from state borders to country borders. He made this world, right? So a person from Kenya is, to me, no different than a person from California.
Exactly.
I keep picking on California. From a person from Georgia. It's like you're a 18-year-old kid, and in our world of track and field, you run X, Y, and Z in the event. I'd love to have you on the team if it fits our culture.
Like some of the European countries in undergrad, they're not allowed to do sports.
Right.
So they come to the US. Oh, I want to do grad school.
Yeah.
So some schools, grad school like AIC was cheaper than it was to do undergrad there.
Yeah.
So now, as a distance runner, they've had more years of running because they were running for a club.
Right.
But they weren't competing at a high level. So
yeah, I just don't.
You're getting your mileage in.
I just don't like that stigma, because
you serve 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. The other difference, or same thing to me, is like, okay, for people who want to call out that stigma of like, well, you went and bought such. I was like, okay, so let's take. And we're just using these two, not even by name, these two cross-country runners, distance runners from Kenya. But let's say they're same times and makeup and build and academics, but instead of them being from Kenya, they were from Miami, Florida, and that's far from Springfield. And it was whatever, there was latent recruiting resources, they couldn't come visit, so they also signed sight unseen. No one, I've never heard this, no one would say, oh, they bought their championship, they went out and got some kids from Florida. No, they'd be like, oh, they got kids from Florida. But as soon as it becomes international, it's this, you went and bought. I can't stand that.
I think we realized that at AIC was that if we were to go that route with different regions of the country, it would be a little more difficult, just because there's more people, more schools.
There's a difference in culture domestically.
But there's that knowledge base of, you have all these schools in Florida or schools near Florida, for example, if we're using Florida for the example of everybody trying to recruit those top kids. Now you have a limited selection of how many people know about these.
Right. That's what I'm talking about, the culture. There's more knowledge. There's easier knowledge of colleges, because you're right here. You're right in the States in that case. Yeah. No, it just always fascinates me. And you brought up I wasn't saying you were doing it, but the way you said it, I know it was almost like you were, it's a natural defense for it, because I'm sure you heard it. So it was a natural defense of like, oh, even if we wouldn't have had them, we would have won. It's like, I don't care. Why did you say, like, no one would have said that to Florida? That's why it was just like, I understood what you're doing. It's like, oh, this natural defense. So that's why I want to have the discussion of like, why do we, again, globally, we do this? Why do we say we bought? It's just, that's so not true. And I think that's just a terrible, terrible way to talk about young kids and athletics and athletic scholarships, by the way, as well. When people say that, it's like, oh, cringe. Think about what you're actually saying.
A higher level of talent out of school to get recruited.
And I think what you really, really, really nailed the point of, I know we're coaches, but we are in the education system here, and for colleges, and those kids are still coming here and getting great educations, and they're either staying here in the States and helping our economy, our society, our medicine, or they're going home and they're helping their society, their economy, their hospitals, their health. That's like, bravo, you made the AIC made the world better because these two people got education.
Some of them got married, stayed in the US, got into the military.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Love it. All right, we were going to Ashland. So how did you get to Ashland? Thanks for indulging me on these. I have these conversations where I'm just like, I really want people to, like, I really think the conversation we just had there, Logan, I truly, truly think people are listening right now and they're like, yeah, wait a minute, why do I say that? Like, I think that's what I love about challenging beliefs as it relates to track and field and society. And I think there's people right now going, wait a minute, I do say that. And I kind of say that off the cuff because, I don't know, it's what I was supposed to say, or that's what I was taught to say, or that's what my old coach used to say to me. So that's why I said, it's like, and now that, and I think the conversation we just had there, I think people have sat back and are like, wait a minute, that's true. They are just 18-year-old kids, whether they're from Miami, Minneapolis, or Nairobi. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? It doesn't. It doesn't. So I just really appreciate you being open with that conversation, because it's not an easy necessarily conversation to have. So you did great, and I'm super, super thankful. Now I will allow you to say, why did you go to Ashland?
So I was told at AIC to get the interim tag removed, I had to have a pretty good year. So
that's right,
December
intern.
came around, I'm at the coaching convention. The AD at the time, or she's still AD, calls me up, says, "Hey, based off of how your cross country season went, I think you're more than fit for the job." I'm like,
I was about to say, don't tell me she said no, because
right.
you won.
So
Yeah.
she's like, in the coming weeks that you're gonna have that removed. She's like, asking me for quotes and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, it's gonna be posted. So
Are you pumped? Were you excited about this?
yeah, I'm excited. I'm like,
Good.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is where my future is. I'm gonna be the director here. I want to be able to build this program my way and still go off the success that Leo had built before me, the success that Leo and I had together. It's like, we're going to continue that. But now we just had a storybook fall with winning both conference and regionals together, men and women, with a sprints coach doing it. Now, what can we do when we bring in more people
Right.
in the direction that I could see it, right? And so I'm ecstatic, get it removed. Now that, okay, we had hired a distance coach to start coach distance. Now I'm back with the sprints. I feel comfortable again, and we had Rich Hart there coaching with me with the jumps, and he was also working throws. And so it was like, okay, we started having a little bit of staff. They gave me the opportunity to get another assistant coach and then a GA. So I hired a GA on. Couldn't at that time, around January, February, you don't see many assistant coaches that you're looking to hire. They've all been hired, right? They have stopped looking because they're like, all right, let's wait till May, June comes around when the domino effect of jobs happens, right? So, and I was like, let's hold off on that one. We have women win the indoor conference for the first time indoors, bring people to nationals. We had one of the best finishes ever at indoor nationals, get to outdoors. While going through all that, we had a new vice president of athletics hired, and he wanted to kind of change the way things were going. So, and not in his mind, it wasn't necessarily changing it for bad. It was changing it for good. He's trying to help the school out and saying, hey, this is my way of making revenue for the school. This is what we're going to do now. And that's where we got limited, no more international recruiting. Couldn't go to certain meets. Budgets were all going to be cut. And it was in my mind, I'm like, all right, we're taking away. And I was like, in my mind, I'm not a business major, but I know you got to spend money to make some money sometimes. So I'm like, we're taking all this money away. And then we're telling kids, hey, you're no longer going to get this scholarship next year. And I know the NCAA is on this whole thing of no scholarships has to be renewed. Like, it's a year-to-year basis, which I completely agree with. But now he's telling kids that have had success, that are not doing bad in school. He's telling me you have to figure out how you're going to make up the scholarship deficit with what we have. And I'm like, this looks messed up. So I'm going to kids that are from Kenya, from Jamaica, that we had made sure they were fully funded because they needed it in order to go to school. They needed a full scholarship. They didn't have any money.
Right.
I'm telling these kids, hey, I have to take $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 from you, even though you have done nothing wrong. And in my mind, I'm like, this is bad news. These kids came here for education. They didn't come here just to run. Even our domestic kids, now they're going to be stacked. So now I'm telling these kids, hey, you're getting your same scholarship, but no, it's going to say that you're not getting as much athletic aid, even though we told you because of your athletic ability, you're getting this athletic aid. Now you're getting more an academic aid because we don't have the athletic aid. And it was just a weird scenario. Being a young guy, I was like, no, I'm going to fight back on this. I'm going to fight for my program. Like, this program looks really good right now. We're really talented. We're building from this. Let's keep moving forward. Let's not have to take steps back. And I told the guy multiple times, like, hey, listen, like this isn't the right way. I don't like this. And we got through outdoor track. Everything's going well. I go to the golf tournament. The next day after the golf tournament, I get an email from and mind you, I talked with Ernie Clark back in like March about what had gone on at Ashland, and he's out of San Jose saying, hey, Ashland needs your help. He's like, you're one guy. If I were to say they could use a coach, he's like, you're one guy I would call to have you go to Ashland to go coach. You and I have talked about moving on to different jobs and what it did for him to go to San Jose. Now he's like, I want you to be able to go there. He's like, if you can go there in the spring, go coach to Ashland in the spring. I'm like, Ernie, I can't leave my team. Like, I'm a director of a team. There's no way I can go over there and just be an assistant right now. Like, it's not happening. Can't just step in that role, So we get to the golf tournament right after outdoor nationals, and goes fine. The next day I get an email from HR. Please report to HR for urgent matter, 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Never the email you want to get.
Yeah, I've never gotten an email like that.
Right.
And I'm like, what just happened? So I'm calling my
What's
assistant coach.
running through your mind? Because there's 1,000 scenarios you can paint there. Oh, a kid, something's wrong with a
Yeah, and that's
kid.
how, in my mind, I'm like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Where did
Yeah,
I-
yeah. Right. What did I do wrong? What
yeah,
would an assistant do?
right.
Right. There are a billion things. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, what just happened? And so I'm calling up my assistant coach and I was like, hey, have you heard anything?
Yeah.
Like,
What's up?
did,
Right.
did the athlete say something to you? Did you report something? Like, what's going on? No. He's like, this doesn't sound good though. So I'm calling my sport oversight.
He's pouring on. There's like, this don't sound good for you.
Right. I call my sport oversight and he was always more of a positive guy. He was like, oh, maybe they're just trying to look at something in the administration that you had said a comment. And he was just coming up with different scenarios of what it could be. And so I called administration, ignored, like straight to voicemail.
Yeah. Yeah.
My sport oversight, the AD,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
vice
Yeah.
president. I'm calling everybody. I'm
Yeah,
calling all the
but when you
coaches.
think about it, that's what they had to do that.
Right.
The whole,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm calling other coaches like, hey, you had this? No, but I've heard of this with this person that didn't go well. Just good luck. Let me know what happens. Okay.
Right.
Like, nothing setting easy. Talk to my parents about it. They're like, oh, and my parents are like, what did you do wrong? I'm like, I
Thanks,
don't know.
mom.
Like, we just had the story of a career.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The season, like, this is probably the best season AIC's ever had. Like,
Yeah.
what? I don't know what happened. And like, none of the kids left really mad. Like, they're all pretty good. And talking to Leo, he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't know. He's like, they can't do anything to you. He's like, blah, 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 right? Show up to HR the next
Were
morning.
you more nervous? Because I remember you talking about when you went in for your interview at New Haven, first interview, you're super nervous. When you think about just nerves and nervousness, more nervous going into that interview or more nervous walking into that HR department?
More nervous talking to HR because in my mind, I'm like, my life's over.
Mm.
Like, here's what I've put all my time and energy into this one position this year. And now all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on. So I walk in and there's a cop in there. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, I'm not getting arrested. What just happened? And so I'm friends with the cop. The cop's at all the track meets. So I'm talking like, hey man, what's going on? He's like, I'm here for a meeting at 8:30 a.m. Like, me too, because I was there early, right? I'm like, this is really awkward. HR walks in, sits down, and unfortunately, we're terminating your position. There's no longer a director of track and field at AIC. And I was like, okay. I was like, so I'm gonna be the head coach. Like, that's fine. Just bump me back down to head coach. Like, no, because you had hired a head coach underneath you for track, your position is gone. You no longer have a position here. They're like, please turn in your keys. And I was like, wait, can I ask why? They're like, we don't have to have reasons why. It's a hire and fire at will.
Yeah, right to work or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or fire, yeah, at will. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, did I do anything wrong? Like, you did nothing wrong. It's just we're removing your position. So of course, I'm like, okay. I was like,
what was the cop there for? Was that more just like in case you flipped out or something?
I asked him, or I asked the HR. They're like, oh, we just have a police officer here, and for all these types of situations in case something happens.
Yeah, in case you flip out. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so you're scared of me? And I was like,
you said that?
Yeah, I was like, you're scared of me.
Logan.
Like, no, you're not. We're not scared of you. I was like, oh, I was like, so what is he here for? And she's like, he's here to escort you off campus. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's fine. I was like, can I go back to my office to grab my stuff? Can I go to the track shed to get all my equipment?
Yeah, get your stuff. Yeah.
Oh no, you're no longer an employee here, so that's considered trespassing. And we'll pack it up for you.
Dude, Logan.
Yep.
You are guest number 208. And I thought, I figured after 100, I might have heard every story. Definitely after 200, I have heard every story. No one has come on the show and said, I was escorted off my campus.
Well,
and if anybody would have said they would have done that, I'd be like, oh, it's because you did something like really bad. Like you stole from that. Like none of that.
Nope.
Logan, I know it's a short career, but I can't imagine that this is not like the lowest of low lights, like never imagined of all the bad things you think could have happened in a career.
Right.
This never even came, like, this is absurdity. Yeah. This ain't happening. How are you feeling during this?
I didn't know what to feel. I was like, all right, I'm done. Like now, and it
like
was
numbness.
Like I was calling people laughing. I was like, huh, I'm done. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, this is what happened. And so
did it feel even real? Like, did it feel like, okay, they're going to call me tomorrow and be like, April Fools or something.
Right.
Or I'm going to wake up from this dream and it's like, oh, what a terrible dream.
Nope. No, that's exactly how I was kind of feeling. And so within the next day, like talking with Leo, talking with Rich, it was, okay, what's your next move? And it was, okay, I got to apply places. Like, and luckily.
There is the nugget of that story. You didn't. Oh, I love this. This,
Anytime.
this, yeah, yeah. This bears digging in here a little bit. And how, I want to be respectful of your time. We are at our time. Are you good? Okay,
I'm
good.
good. We got practice at 1, I think, or 2, so we're
All
good.
right. Well, we'll be good there. But what's interesting is, I mean, this is a pretty low part of your career. Not a pretty low. Come on, let's not sugarcoat this. This is I can't imagine. Can't imagine. And there are, again, there's a fork in the road. You have a lot of decisions you can make here. And I think a lot of people would take time to lick their wounds. Woe is me. I've been wronged. All truths, by the way. But instead, you called your people, and the people, your mentors, your advisors, your network that you surround yourself, both of y'all together are like, all right, what's our next move? Like, no time for feeling sad. What's my next move? That's important.
So it was interesting. I met up with, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, I met up with Leo and Nick Noheimer, who's at New Haven when I was there coaching. He's still there. And we sat at a Starbucks for probably about 4 or 5 hours. They were writing training. And I'm like, well, I don't have any summer training to write. And I just sat there filling out job applications for all different schools all over the country. Like, where do you want to go? I was like, I don't know, anywhere. And that it was that same morning before I got Leo picked me up. He's like, listen, he's like, I don't want you spending gas money. I don't want you doing anything. And I was sitting outside waiting for him to pick me up. And in my phone, I had already talked to Ernie Clark about it. And he's like, well, he's like, call the new head coach at Ashland, call up AG, see what he's got going on. And so I was randomly like, and I talked with Eric Evans. He was saying the same thing. He's like, AG's waiting for a phone call from you. And I just didn't know how to approach it, saying, oh yeah, I just got let go at a place. How do I go and just talk to a head coach? Yeah, come hire me,
Before
And
you get to AG, who I love, by the way, I've been a huge AG fan since I met him at Division II Nationals with Judd Logan, by the way.
Okay.
I was so naive. I didn't know who AG was in regards to like thrower. And I'm talking with Judd, who I hired Judd's son here at Gill, my first hire, Nate Logan. Yeah.
Yep.
So I became really good friends with Judd. Again, Judd, another podcast alum here. And if you haven't listened to his episode, get fired up, get ready. We mentioned a couple
I
other
had
people.
to in order to go to the interview.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, we mentioned I can't not mention past Gill podcast alums that we've also mentioned. Chris Parno, podcast alum, Ernie Clark, podcast alum. Go back. Great. Again, we're on episode 208. So you got 207 to catch up on if this is your first episode. So I got to tell the story real quick. So I go to Division II Nationals and I'm talking with Judd, and there's AG there, and his badge says, was it athletic trainer or something like that? I'm like, dude, I was like, you're a pretty big athletic trainer. And he was like, well, actually I kind of help Judd coach, and I'm a thrower. And this is how I got into the, and I was like, oh, and then I found out who AG was. I was like, oh, dude, that was so dumb. like he's one of America's best. And I'm just like, you're a big old athletic trainer, So anyway, before we get to AG, because again, I've now since then have gone to known and just love AG.
We have to bust him for that later on when I get.
Oh, please do say, hey, Mike said you were an athletic trainer when he mentioned. He won't even remember the story. He don't remember anyway. But at this point, before we get to AG, any creep into your mind of like disillusionment, disenchantment of the profession of coaching, of like, why am I doing this? Should I just go let me go lean back on my exercise phys education?
Well, that was so when I'm applying for jobs, I'm looking online, I'm like, Yale New Haven Hospital, cardiac rehab specialist. I'm like maybe I'm gonna spend a year doing this, maybe, and started just looking at things like, because I was like, I'd already been told, hey, make sure you collect the unemployment and get it filled out immediately. They're like, Massachusetts takes forever, the AIC takes forever with it, so make sure you get that done. So that was done day one, and it probably took a month for anything to kick in with that. So I went the whole month with nothing. And
I thank you for being honest there, because that was the same thing. I had a big thing on my 10th year of coaching at Mississippi State, and I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I thought I wanted to be a big time, my whole career was to get to the SEC. I was like, I thought this is what I wanted. So let me get completely, that's how I got to Vegas. I was like, let me get completely away and see if it brings me back. And thank God it did. So I appreciate you being honest about that.
One of my other thoughts was like, do I want to go in the private sector? Like,
yeah.
And to be honest with you, I said, like, I'm too young and I'm not known well enough yet to get a really good athlete to be able to coach at that high level. So I'm like, oh, I can't do that route. Do I want to make my own club? I'm like, all this is going to cost money.
Yeah. All these things are going through your head. What are my options? What are my options? Yeah. I love that.
It was funny because I went back to my memory and I was like, you know what, Will Wright, after he retired, he went on to other schools to coach at after Southern. And I remember seeing him at meets, and he's like, he gave me 3 golden rules to live by. He had passed away a year or so ago. And he's like, if you're going to go into coaching, get a real job first. Is number one. I didn't do that. I didn't listen to him on that.
Hmm.
Second one, if you're going to go into coaching, make sure you have a bucket hat, because he had a bunch of issues with skin cancer, I think, with his ears.
Oh, that's I love that, because we don't take care of
Yeah.
ourselves. We don't use sunscreen. We don't use yes, I love that.
And the third one was with the hurdles, is with touchdown times. Like, got to know the touchdown times. If the touchdown times aren't right, they're not running well. He's like, you got to make sure the touchdown times are better.
That really ran the gamut there.
Yeah. Those were 3 things that he would always, every meet, he would bring those 3 things up to me. And I got thinking, I was like, man, I didn't get a real job. I was like, track coaching is not a real job. It's fun. It's not the 9 to 5 or part-time thing that's going to make you a lot of money. And that was the reason why he said that. It was like, you want to be able to make your money first. If you have loans, pay your loans off, because as a coach, you're not going to be making the right amount of money. And I was like, okay. And sure enough, he was right at that point. And I was like, this is a rough time period to be in. And now everything's opened back up because of COVID. It's like things are now more expensive to do. It's like and so I talked to AG that morning before I got in the car. And Leo had asked me, he's like, how'd that go? I'm like, pretty good. He's just asked me what my coaching philosophy was. He's like, well, what'd you tell him? I was like, depends. And I was like, depends on the athlete. He's like, oh, he's like, you're vague. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, coaching is very vague. Like, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. I wasn't going to tell him I'm a speed-based guy. I'm a strength-based guy. It's like, I have a bunch of different philosophies that I work through, and depends on the athlete, depends on what I find in them. And I was like, and that may change as they go through their career and through their seasons. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, well, what'd he say? He's like, he said he'd get back to me. And so I'm that whole morning, all afternoon online, filling out applications, and I'm looking at schools. I'm like, I do not want to be at this school, but it's a spot. Don't want to be at this school, but it'll get me through for a year. It'll get me through 6 months. Like, that's the way I was looking at it, of like, what can I do? Looking at all the other jobs, like maybe I can do this for the summer. And it was in a lost space of what do I do, you know? But there was people that would call me every morning, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you see this job? I'm like, all right. Like, it was a rigorous couple of weeks. And then a week later, AG called me and was like, hey, gonna get an email. I'm like, okay. And he's like, yep, gonna get an email and watch on campus next week. And he basically hung up. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I don't know what this is about. So I get an email from Elizabeth Hogue, she's our administrator. And the email was, hey, we'd like to get you on campus. We're going to schedule you a flight. Now, mind you, I've never really been outside the East Coast for coaching. I'm like, whoa, they're flying me out there. This is big time. This is, dude, I'm going to be really nervous. Oh, by the way, we're going to book you a hotel. We're going to get you a rental car. And then the big kicker was, put this stuff on your card and we'll reimburse you. Wait, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be collecting unemployment right now, and that's not even kicking in. And I took the pay cut at AIC. I've been living month to month. Like, whoa, this is this is gonna hurt. And I'm not one of those guys that's gonna go to mom and dad and say, hey, mom and dad, I need $1,000 to do this. Like, just gonna stay humble and figure it out, you know. So here I am swiping the credit card. And they reimburse it really quickly. But a week later, they'd phone me on campus. And it was Trevor's last big workout, Trevor Bassett's last big workout.
Another Gill podcast alum.
Yeah, so I'm Facebook and Instagram messaging him, and I'm like, hey, like, what's Ashland like? I'm talking to Channing Phillips, like, hey, what's Ashland like? Like, what is there to do up there? And they're like, oh, it's a nice small community. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm looking around and stuff. I pull up and I was like, Trevor, you gonna be at the school working out? And he gave me his workout time, and I pulled up right in the middle of the workout. By the way, I was talking to Eric Evans, like, yeah, I'm coming the day ahead of time. I want to really explore and figure out what I'm looking at before it's. So Eric and I went and had dinner and stuff like that. But I go out to the track and Trevor's out there working out. He's like, man, this is the first time I've ever been over 8 hurdles in practice at once. I was like, oh. And then I got thinking, like, Ernie Clark training. This is where we're sitting. And he's like, yeah, he's like 8 hurdles. And he had done a workout. I think it was 8 hurdles, 5 hurdles, 4 hurdles, or 3 hurdles. I don't exactly remember, but we had sat out there for a long time, talked to a couple of the athletes were out there, and a couple of the alumni were still out hanging out. And I was like, okay, like, this is pretty comfortable. And Trevor, first thing Trevor did, he's like, I don't have time to give you a tour, but that's the tallest building in Ashland right there, Ashland County. And it was the library.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not a big building. Like, here I am coming from the East Coast. You got Springfield, you got Boston, you got New York City. I'm like, that's the tallest building? Okay. Well, I grew up in upstate New York. So next day we go to the interview, and AG interview was at 8:30, which I'm like, 8:30 interview, that's early. Like, that means for me to get ready at the hotel have breakfast, feel good about everything. I'm getting up early. So I'm up 8 a.m. He texts me, hey, it was literally like, hey, see you at the troop center, 8:30 a.m. Can't wait to meet you. I'm like, okay. And I was like, it's the parking lot is the one across the street, correct? He's like, yep. And so I pull up about 5-10 minutes early. He goes, I'll be here waiting. And I'm like, I just pulled in. He's like, okay, come on in. So I go in, we sit down in his office, which is across from mine right now. And it's about an hour worth with him. He's like, explain yourself, explain who you are. And I'm like, okay. And they got coaching class for me. And I mentioned the same exact thing on the phone. It was he had few words to say, very quick to the point, but he just wanted to listen. I got done. He's like, okay. He's like, you're going to go on tour. You're going to go meet with AD. And afterwards, you're going to have you meet with the athletes on Zoom. I'm like, okay. We go through, and we had lunch, and we go through all that. And on the way out, he's like, yep. He's like, if I hire you, he's like, you want to coach multis? You want to coach deliver the jumps? He's like, we're missing some coaches. We're going to need you to fill some spots. I'm like, yeah, I've worked with some jumpers, worked with some multis. Like, it'll be all right. We can manage it until we get more coaches. And he's like, okay. He goes, well, let me know when you're home safe and give me a call. I'm like, okay. So I go to the airport. I drove around more Ashland just to get my general senses. I go to the airport and I'm calling my parents. And I'm like, weird thing is, I was never asked an interview question. And they're like, what? And I was like, no interview question at all. It was why we want you here. Al King, the athletic director, this is why we want you here. The athletes were, what are you going to do for us? There was never hey, are you good at this? Are you able to do this? What's your philosophy with this? And one of the assistant coaches outside, Jake Sussman. And it turned into me realizing that. I go to the airport, and then all of a sudden, flight canceled. I'm stuck in Ohio for the night.
Oh no!
I'm calling AG. I'm like, hey, I'm stuck in Ohio. You're not going to get the phone call that, hey, I'm back.
Right? Yeah, I'm not safe. I'm not home.
Don't be waiting for that. Get stuck here. And it was like a whole thing. I'm like, oh, Ohio doesn't want me to leave. So I get home, and I call him finally, and he goes, yeah. He's like, I want to offer you. I'm like, okay. And he's like, when can you start? I'm like, I gotta move everything from Massachusetts to Ohio. So but it was very quick. I got to realize who he was because it was and he joked, he's like, yep, I'm very much like Judd, but I got my own ways too. And they're very short to the point. Had to get things done. And his day is set up still to the day. Like when he was training, every 10 minutes is planned out. If you're over that 10 minutes, he's moving on. And it's something that within our program that's adjusting to now. So the biggest question that I was asked when I came here is, are you going to be able to be here? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, do you like this town? I'm like, I grew up in a town like this. And they were concerned because they knew I was from some cities, and they were like, we don't want to bring in somebody that halfway through the year is homesick. I'm like, nope. I'm like, this is like my hometown. So
it's very parallel to how you recruit, the questions you ask, the concerns you have, to how you recruit an assistant coach as well.
It was awesome too, because within a month of AIC saying, hey, we're going this direction, a month later I was at Ashland.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was quick,
dude. When we started today, Logan, I always think I have a sense of how the story is going to go. I don't we didn't mention this. I'll tell you about this in the pre-interview, but in the pre-interview, typically I'll tell our guest, hey, I don't do any pre-research. It allows me just to kind of keep my curiosity cap on and just ask questions. So I don't know where you've been and why and all those kind of things. So, but I have kind of a like most, we're going to go this direction. The directions we took today, my friend, holy cow, man. And I love it, because that's what, first of all, I love lifting up and honoring what you've done. I mean, the things that you've done, not only positively professionally, but the things that you've been through negatively professionally. Those are what makes you who you are today. And then on the same token, for listeners who will listen to this today, and 2 years, 5 years from now, someone will listen to this podcast and they'll hear a story of like never giving up, no feeling sorry for yourself. Something's going to happen to you bad at some point in your life. You're going to lose a loved one. You're going to lose a job. Hopefully you're not called into HR with a cop. That's pretty low on the totem pole here. But even hitting a low point like that, positivity, bounce back can come from that. And you're a great example of that. As we round out today, knowing that this is published on the Monday of Division II Nationals. So you and I are both in Pueblo at this point when this publishes. Give us a prediction. I want to hear. And this is on wax, so you can't take this back. And I'm going to open it up to whatever prediction you want, meaning whether it's specifically for Ashland or an Ashland athlete or just a meet in general. Just what do you think about this week? I assume this is your first time in Pueblo as
not,
well. Oh, okay, all right. Well,
yeah, no,
it's a good place.
So,
that's right. Well, you had nationals there before, right? Yeah, that's right. As soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, of course. What are you thinking about for this week? What's got you excited heading into Pueblo for Division II nationals?
it was one of my favorite meets back when I was a college athlete. I ran the 400 hurdles there and the 4x4 there. So knowing for Ashland, it's a growing year for us. Like I said, we're going to have 50 plus recruits next year. We lost a number of them last year before I was able to get here. A couple kids had to transfer out, a couple kids had to leave because of family issues, but we realized that this year is a growing year. So it's more so what we have going in. I think that this group is pretty dominant for what we have. And I mean, we're talking about this before our last chance meet that we have this coming week. We have
right
that we're doing. So I'm also right now trying to look at what could transpire in these, but the year that we've had at Ashland has been remarkable. Lots of top 10 marks all time, school records, 4x1 and women's 400, which we're going to this last chance meet. We're still trying to get our 401 in. It's the best the GMAC has ever seen at 45.90, yet it's still sitting 16. So it's one of those things where we're going to have one of our best years overall in sprints, throws that people keep carrying, but it's exciting to see where Division II is going.
Yeah.
Like you look at the times, I used to go into the hurdles top 3 in the nation at 51. That doesn't even make top 10. 4x1s, like last year I had a team that ran about 0.5 of a second, half a second slower, and we were only like the third team out. And now all of a sudden 45.90s on the verge of not even making it. And I keep telling the girls now we got to run faster. So maybe at this point we are in there. I don't know. We'll see going into that. But our 4x4 we ran 3:42 at our conference meet, which again, it's not our school record, but it's facility record, stuff like that. And that's sitting 10th currently, which there's teams running 3:35. So it's crazy how fast and developed Division II's gotten. I'm not sure because of COVID if it's going to stay that way. I think if it stays that way for another year, it's going to be permanent, but it's exciting. I mean, we got to watch Cordell Tench from Pitt State run second time all time, all conditions. So it's an eventful meet to watch. And that's why I've stayed in Division II so far. I eventually want to move on to Division I, but it's been an exciting thing to see that development in Division II. So
it's a fantastic meet. I've attended the Division II indoor and outdoor nationals now for the past couple of years, and it's phenomenal. I mean, it's literally, that's why like I've stopped thinking about this. Like, I don't like that it's called D1, D2, D3, because there's a hierarchy of numbers, and it's like, man, it's just a different division, different collection of schools. But there are coaches there, buddy, and just go look at the results, and that will tell you all you need to know. There, you don't go to D2 because you like to well, I'll just, I'll be an okay coach and I'll still get kids nationals. Oh, you still better bring your game, because to make it in any of these events from 10K down to the, well, I don't even want to put in the 110 hurdles because it's just stupid this year with Tench, man. I mean, it's just, unbelievable. I mean, the 100 and 200 last year, I mean, it's just,
it's with the
crazy.
Girls, you used to be able to say like 14-2 is going to be right on the cusp right now,
right?
In the 30s.
It's amazing. So I'm super excited to watch the Ashland Eagles and to see you, and honestly to see you coaching, because you could have, and no one would have blamed you gotten out of coaching out of the bad experience that you had. I'm so glad you put it in the past and you continue to move forward, man. So Logan, man, thank you for being here today. I mean, this was absolutely phenomenal. Great conversation about international recruiting and athletics, and then great conversation about just professional hardships and how to bounce back from them. And what's awesome is you're still so young. I know it seems like so long ago, that first head job at New Haven, that seems like 2 lives ago. That was yesterday, my friend. You have so much in front of you. I'm super excited to see what the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to look like for you, and the coaching journey that you're going to continue to go on, and the young people that you're going to continually positively impact, man. That is the ultimate nugget of what you do as a
Right.
track coach. So I can't wait to see the athletes that come from your coaching that become moms and dads and doctors and business owners, coaches and teachers. It's going to be, it's life-changing what you do. And so I'm just excited to be along and share the journey with others out there. So thank you so much for being here today, my man.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, man. Good luck this week. And I'm sure as soon as this is published, I'll go see you at the track. So we'll see you there. All right, Logan, man. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here, listening this week. It is championship week as we get into closer to Division I championships in a couple weeks as well. And then you have USA champs, etc. Nike outdoor high school nationals at Oregon. It's quite an amazing time frame. There is no better time than championship season in track and field. So go out and enjoy it. Go find a track meet near you, and then join us. Come back here next week, and we'll do it all over again here at the Gill Connections podcast. Thanks, everybody.